Chapter 1362. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' injuries were not serious, so it did not affect their movements at all. The next day, they inquired about the ancient ruins in Wuguang City and learned about it. Now that the fluctuations of the ancient ruins were getting bigger and bigger, they believed that it would appear in a few days. However, it would take a few days for the restrictions of the ancient ruins to disappear, so everyone still had to wait for a while. After learning about the news, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the house. Now that there were so many cultivators in Wuguang City, it was easy to get into trouble if they went out. It was better to stay quietly in the house and cultivate. When the ancient ruins opened, they could face it in their best condition. If they could get treasures in the ancient ruins, it would be really worth it. Inside the house, Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman were cultivating hard. As they saw more and more strong cultivators, the sense of urgency in their hearts grew stronger. It was said that the news of the ancient ruins had alarmed the cultivators of the large empires, and many of them were rushing to Wuguang City. If it was only the cultivators of the small and medium empires, it would be easier for them to get treasures. Once the cultivators of the large empires arrived, their strength was really not enough. In such a situation full of opportunities, they really did not want to be a burden to their boss. Therefore, they were now cultivating hard, hoping to make some progress. After all, the yuan qi in the small world was twice as rich as the outside world, and the speed of cultivation here was much faster than before. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes. On the surface, she looked like she was cultivating, but in fact her spiritual consciousness had entered the chaos ring. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also entered the chaos ring. Since Baisher had fallen into a deep sleep until now, it had been a long time, and they did not know when Baisher would break through. Baisher has been in seclusion for a really long time this time, and he has not broken through for so long. I wonder what realm his strength will break through to? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with curiosity. Before this, she didn't know White Lion's identity, so she didn't think much of it. However, ever since White Lion had made such a huge breakthrough, she felt that this guy was quite abnormal. It shouldn't be weak. After all, it has eaten a lot of monster crystals and a Sky Spirit Bear's monster crystal. It should be able to break through to orange level. Xiao Bai said after some thought. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the sleeping White Lion. The sleeping White Lion's body was very petite, and its sleeping appearance was very cute. Speaking of which, she was also amazed by White Lion's method of improvement. Regardless of whether it was a human cultivator or a demonic beast, if they wanted to increase their cultivation, they would need to cultivate diligently. Normally, it would be extremely difficult to increase one's cultivation by one level. However, the White Lion did not need to go through so much trouble. He only needed to continuously consume spirits to increase his cultivation. This should be a method that only Beast Kings could use to increase their powers. As long as there was an endless supply of demon crystals, he believed that Baisher's speed of improvement would become faster and faster. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with joy. This meant that White Lion's future was filled with endless possibilities. However, as White Lion's powers increased, she was afraid that the monster crystals he would need would also be of a higher grade. This was not a simple matter. Chapter 1363. As the appearance of the ancient ruins got closer and closer, there were more and more cultivators in Wuguang City. The streets that were originally relatively empty were now filled with cultivators, and the entire Wuguang City was overcrowded. There were many things that led to a fight. Sometimes there would be a room-snatching storm like what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others encountered. On this day, the news that the ruins had appeared quickly spread in Wuguang City. Every day, there would be cultivators going to check the situation of the ruins. Even the cultivators in Wuguang City could feel that the fluctuations of the ruins were getting bigger and bigger. Everyone could feel that the excitement of the cultivators in Wuguang City was gradually increasing. Originally, they could still cultivate quietly, but now they were completely in a state of anxiety. Boss, I heard that there are already some cultivators guarding near the ruins. Should we also set off? After Xia Jiqing learned the news in the city, she immediately returned to the house and told Bailey Hongzhuang about the current situation. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were also in the house. The opening of the ruins was getting closer and closer, and their hearts uncontrollably emerged with a sense of tension. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand slightly. The ancient ruins have just appeared today. The restriction will disappear in about 3 days. We don't have to be so anxious. She believed that as long as the cultivators had some understanding of the ruins, they would not choose to go now. The wilderness could be attacked by monsters at any time. Mental tension was not a good state. If they stayed there for 3 days, when the ruins were really opened, they would not have the energy to fight for the treasures. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other and nodded. On this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding was far more than theirs. Since Hongzhuang said so, it proved that Hongzhuang must be confident. I was wondering, there are still many cultivators in the city who haven't made a move yet. I thought it was strange before, so it was like this. Xia Jiqing smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. After 2 days, we will set off and wait for the restriction to disappear completely. As the head of the Bailey family in her previous life, she was quite familiar with the ruins. It would take about 3 days for the restriction to disappear from the ruins. Although there would be some differences in the time of each ruin, there would definitely be no problem for them to set off 2 days later. Only in this way could they maintain a relatively good state. The ruins are about to open. I'm really nervous. Yuan Xiaoman couldn't hide the excitement on her face. I've only heard about how powerful the ruins are before, but I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to see it with my own eyes this time. There are many dangers in the ruins. If you're not careful, you may lose your life. Xiaoman, you can't be too excited. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but say. Ever since she saw the ancient ruins in the falling Cloud Mountain range, she knew that the ruins were not simple. Although this thing was very exciting to talk about, the dangers involved were really shocking. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Yuan Xiaoman's eyes flashed with surprise. She looked at Xia Jiqing in confusion. Jiqing, you're so knowledgeable. Have you seen enough ruins? Chapter 1364. Seeing that Xia Jiqing had actually seen the ancient ruins with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Yuan Xiaoman's mouth couldn't help but turn into an O shape. This was too unbelievable. Ancient ruins, that was something that many cultivators couldn't see in their lifetime, but Xia Jiqing and the others could team up to see it together. This was really not an ordinary fate. Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jiqing looked at each other. In any case, they were now part of the team. Jiqing, tell me about the last time you entered the ancient ruins. What was it like? Yuan Xiaoman came to Xia Jiqing's side. She was really curious about the ancient ruins. If she could get some experience from Xia Jiqing, she could pay more attention when entering the ancient ruins in the future. Seeing that Yuan Xiaoman was extremely interested in this, Xia Jiqing also opened her mouth and excitedly told Yuan Xiaoman about what she had seen in the ancient ruins before. Gong Xiaoqing and the others looked at the excited Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman, and there was a faint smile in their eyes. Speaking of which, Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman's characters were very similar, and the two were particularly congenial. The tension that had emerged because the ancient ruins was about to open was reduced a bit by Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman's chatter. 2 days later, Xia Jiqing and the others found that there were fewer and fewer cultivators in Wuguang City. Everyone had rushed to the place where the ancient ruins were located. However, there were also some cultivators who had not yet set off. Let's go too. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the people who were ready and said, Okay. Everyone nodded. They believed that the ancient ruins would open tomorrow, and they should indeed set off. With the departure of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, many cultivators in Wuguang City also set off. The cultivators who set off at this time were often cultivators who had some understanding of the ancient ruins. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to wait until now. Along the way, there were other teams around Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but no one had the slightest communication. They just quickly went to the place where the ancient ruins were located. In this situation, everyone didn't even have the idea of provoking opponents. They just wanted to mind their own business. After all, the ancient ruins were the most important treasures. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the area where the ancient monument was located, they saw a sea of people. At a glance, the ground was full of cultivators, and everyone was looking at the ancient monument. Seeing such a spectacular scene, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but exclaim, "Aren't there too many people? What a surprise!" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the crowd and sighed. There are already many cultivators participating in the assessment. Now almost half of them have gathered together. Gong Xiaoqing frowned. "Hongzhuang, there are so many cultivators here. Could Han Xiling and the rest be here too?" As Gong Xiaoqing's voice fell, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others changed. For them, Han Xiling was always a hidden danger. It was best to solve it as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and her pretty face was filled with thoughts. Han Xiling is also likely to appear here. Chapter 1365. After knowing this, everyone was more careful when they paid attention to their surroundings. A cold and despicable guy like Han Xiling might make some sneak attacks at any time, so they had to be on guard. "Let's find a place to sit down first," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Everyone nodded. The front of the monument was already full of cultivators. They could only find a place to sit down casually, which was not close to the gate of the monument. Usually, this area was a place where demonic beasts wreaked havoc. However, as more and more cultivators gathered, the demonic beasts began to disperse. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could still see the bodies of monsters. Clearly, in the past 2 days, the cultivators here had been extremely busy. After dealing with a lot of demonic beasts, the demonic beasts were afraid of them and did not appear again. Xia Jiqing and the others could find that among the cultivators at the front, many people's mental state was not very good. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but admire Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was right. It was useless to come here too early. On the contrary, it would affect their own state. Now that they were here, the monsters would no longer appear, which undoubtedly saved them a lot of trouble. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Since knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang was here, he couldn't help but pay attention. The waste that was suppressed by him in the beginning had now become like this. He had seen the lonely appearance of the crown prince with his own eyes. This kind of counterattack was really unacceptable to him. "Hongzhuang." Just as Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and prepared to cultivate, a familiar voice sounded in front of her. Hearing this call, not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Gong Xiaoqing and the others also looked in the direction of the voice. With this look, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised to find that the other party turned out to be Mo Yunjue, who they hadn't seen for a long time. Mo Yunjue was still wearing a black robe with silver bamboo embroidered on it. With the movements of Mo Yunjue, it bloomed a little silver light. After not seeing each other for a while, Mo Yunjue was as handsome as before, and a noble aura lingered. Mo Yunjue's nobility was not the same as Di Beichen's domineering nobility. His nobility was full of a reserved depth. At first glance, you wouldn't feel his nobility and domineering, but the closer you got, the more frightened you were. Because he was like a black hole, you couldn't see the bottom. Many of the cultivators present looked at Mo Yunjue, and most of them were women. Although Mo Yunjue had been sitting there without saying a word, his handsome appearance and extraordinary aura had already attracted many people's attention. Following Mo Yunjue's gaze, everyone saw an otherworldly and alluring figure. If a group of female cultivators had some jealousy in their hearts at this moment, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, those dissatisfied words could not be spoken, because this woman was also very outstanding. Xin Yuan Huan and Bailey Haoxuan were sitting next to Mo Yunjue. Previously, they were afraid of Mo Yunjue's team, not for other reasons, but because Mo Yunjue was a cultivator from a large empire. Chapter 1366. However, Xin Yuan Huan and the others did not expect that a cultivator from a large dynasty would know Bailey Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue's figure swept, and slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, long time no see. Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a faint smile. His pair of eyes, which were as deep as a black hole, were shining like stars. He was very happy. I didn't expect you to participate in the assessment. Her light and pleasant voice could not hide her surprise. Since the last time they parted in the Qing dynasty, Bailey Hongzhuang had no news of Mo Yunjue. She originally thought that she would not have a chance to see him in the future. She did not expect to see him in this assessment. It was really a coincidence. Mo Yunjue chuckled. I know that you are participating in the assessment, so I specially participated. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened a little. She only thought that Mo Yunjue was joking and did not take it to heart. She had always been curious about the identity of Mo Yunjue. The last time she saw him in the Qing dynasty, she felt that Mo Yunjue should not be just a restaurant owner in the Qing dynasty. Moreover, this time Mo Yunjue did not represent the Qing dynasty in the assessment, but participated in the assessment as a cultivator from another dynasty. This point alone was enough to prove that Mo Yunjue was not just a person from the Qing dynasty. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not notice the seriousness in Mo Yunjue's eyes. Young Master Mo, I didn't expect to meet you here. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a deep smile. The last time Mo Yunjue helped them in the Qing dynasty, they remembered clearly, so they had always been grateful. His handsome face was full of smiles. Mo Yunjue's eyes swept over Gong Shaoqing and the others and smiled. You are actually in the same team. This is really great. It seemed that Di Beichen really cared about Bailey Hongzhuang. Almost at the moment when he saw Gong Shaoqing and the others, Mo Yunjue had already understood all of this. If it were not for Di Beichen's arrangement, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would not have appeared in this assessment in the form of a small team. Gong Shaoqing and the others smiled. Along the way, almost all the acquaintances they met in the assessment were enemies. It was really a good feeling to meet a friend. Back then, Mo Yunjue's help to them was deeply engraved in their hearts. Therefore, everyone liked Mo Yunjue very much. Young Master, which dynasty are you representing to participate in the assessment competition? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile, her ink-black phoenix eyes filled with curiosity. Qian Feng Dynasty, Mo Yunjue said with a smile. Hearing the name of the Qian Feng Dynasty, Xia Jiqing and the others exclaimed. This Qian Feng Dynasty was a large dynasty. Moreover, the Qian Feng Dynasty was not an ordinary large dynasty, but the real powerhouse of a large dynasty. Mo Yunjue, being able to represent the Qian Feng Dynasty in the assessment competition, had already proved that his identity was not simple. The larger the dynasty, the more fierce the competition. Not only that, this also proved that Mo Yunjue's strength was very strong. Gong Shaoqing and Dong Fengyu looked at each other. Before, they felt that Mo Yunjue's identity was not simple. Otherwise, Mo Yunjue would not dare to offend the royal family of the Qing dynasty. It turned out that Mo Yunjue was not from the Qing dynasty. Young Master Mo, I didn't expect you to be from the Qian Feng dynasty. You are really amazing. Chapter 1367. Are you here on behalf of Tiangang sect? Mo Yunjue frowned slightly, and his handsome eyes were filled with some doubts. But there was a hint of understanding in the depths of his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, but we now call ourselves the Tiangang dynasty. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's eyes changed a bit, but he did not care much about this title. Because of Han Shilin, Mo Yunjue teased. With Mo Yunjue's voice falling, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and others changed slightly, and they looked at Mo Yunjue with slight surprise. They did not expect Mo Yunjue to know about Han Shilin. Feeling the eyes of everyone, Mo Yunjue explained very indifferently. Tiangang sect's young Lord Di Beichen and Han Shilin have always been called a match made in heaven. You are now in such a situation, you can understand it if you look carefully. Xia Jiqing and others suddenly understood. So that's how it is. They only knew that the cultivators of Tiangang sect had always regarded Di Beichen and Han Shiling as a pair, but they did not expect so many people to know about this. Mo Yunjue, as a cultivator of a large dynasty, naturally knew a lot more than them. It seems that Han Shiling did not make it difficult for you. Mo Yunjue looked at the expressions of everyone, and his heart had already understood. Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman on the side were completely dumbfounded when they learned that Bailey Hongzhuang and others were here on behalf of Tiangang sect. They also felt that the name Tiangang dynasty seemed to have something to do with Tiangang sect, but a team of 5 people, they did not think much about it. They just thought that it was an ordinary small dynasty. Now, listening to the conversation of Mo Yunjue and others, the two of them understood. Yuan Xiaoman's eyes were full of amazement. She said that with the strength of the boss, how could he come from a small dynasty? However, Tiangang sect, what a powerful sect. Tiangang sect's young lord. Yuan Jixin muttered to himself, constantly repeating the name of Di Beichen. When Di Beichen went to the Yuan family earlier, he felt that the name Di Beichen was very familiar, but he did not think much about it. Now he knew that Di Beichen was the young lord of Tiangang sect. No wonder Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were so unscrupulous when they were in Yuan Martial City. With such a noble identity, they naturally did not need to be scrupulous. Yuan Hongyang and the others were acquainted with 2 great characters. At this moment, Tiangang sect, but at this moment, when she heard Yuan Jixin's of sex, at with sect, sex, young sect, oh my God. Yuan Xiaoman was completely dumbfounded. What kind of noble status was that? She actually recognized Tiangang sect's young sect mistress as her boss. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not notice the change in Yuan Xiaoman's expression and continued to chat with Mo Yunjue. I heard that Han Shiling is also participating in this year's competition. Could it be that you? Mo Yunjue's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Although everyone had been talking about how powerful Han Shiling was, he didn't think that Han Shiling was that powerful. It was just a rumor. With Bailey Hongzhuang's speed of improvement, if she were to encounter Han Shiling, it would be hard to say who would win. Chapter 1368. Although Mo Yunjue only said half of his words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all understood what he meant. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. We were separated by a strange combination of factors, so we didn't solve it. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, even Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. These words were too domineering. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. These were her heartfelt words. For such a disgusting Han Shiling, she only hoped to get rid of her as soon as possible. She didn't want to wait until the end of the assessment to see Han Shiling. That woman, after leaving Tiangang sect this time, she didn't need to go back. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with appreciation. He had to say that Bailey Hongzhuang's courage was really not something an ordinary person could have. If I see Han Shiling, I will inform you. How about it? Mo Yunjue said with a smile. You know Han Shiling? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Although many cultivators may have heard of Han Shiling, not many people would know what Han Shiling looked like. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. Just like Di Beichen is the dream lover of many female cultivators, Han Shiling is also the dream lover of many male cultivators. Although I have no interest in her, I have seen her portrait. The next moment, Mo Yunjue took a step closer to Bailey Hongzhuang. The corners of his mouth outlined a charming arc, and he said in her ear, "She is not as beautiful as you." After that, Mo Yunjue had already stood up straight, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. "Thank you for the compliment." Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a smile, and she accepted Mo Yunjue's praise very calmly. She had always been very confident in her appearance. Even in the face of Han Shiling, she was not worried at all. The restriction of this monument will probably disappear tomorrow morning. When you enter the monument, you have to be more careful. Mo Yunjue said slowly, I will go back to the team first. Okay. After Mo Yunjua left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat down. I didn't expect to meet young Master Mo here. What a coincidence. Xiao Jiqing said with a smile. Bai Junyi nodded. Maybe young Master Mo will enter the same sect with us in the future. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. They had thought that they had only met once, but it seemed like there would be many more interactions in the future. Bailey Haoshuan looked at the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue, and his eyes were filled with a thick color of surprise. Your Highness, is this man also an admirer of Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Haoshuan frowned. Men were the most accurate in judging other men. Just from the attitude and eyes of the man in black, he could judge that the man in black had special feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Isn't Bailey Hongzhuang already married to Di Beichen? He still comes out to flirt. Bailey Haoshuan was somewhat contemptuous. No matter how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang was now, in his eyes, she was still the annoying Bailey Hongzhuang. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, there wouldn't be so many things happening in the general's mansion. Listening to Bailey Haoshuan's accusation, Xinyuan Huan's eyebrows flashed with impatience. Bailey Haoshuan, Hongzhuang is not such a person. Don't talk nonsense. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really a fickle woman, there were many cultivators who pursued her in the academy, but she didn't respond at all. Chapter 1369. Bailey Haoshuan looked at Xinyuan Huan in surprise. He wanted to let the crown prince vent his anger. He didn't expect the crown prince to be so protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. He really couldn't understand. He didn't think Bailey Hongzhuang was good at all. Xinyuan Huan's heart became more and more emotional. This black-clothed man was obviously an excellent cultivator. Even though Di Beichen's status was so high, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's amazing growth speed, he also felt that the future Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not be weak. After seeing Xinyuan Huan's gradually dignified face, Bailey Haoshuan couldn't help but shut his mouth. If he angered the crown prince because of this, he would really be asking for trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others talked for a while. When they were about to rest, Mo Yunjue's figure appeared in everyone's sight again. Seeing Mo Yunjue suddenly return, everyone was a little surprised. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. He said, "The medium-sized Empire's team has a total of 8 people. I see that your team only has 7 people. Including me, you make 8 people. How about it?" Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, they didn't understand what Mo Yunjue meant. Young Master Mo, you mean you want to join our team? Bai Junyu couldn't help but ask. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. Yes, that's what I mean. Can you agree to let me join? Everyone looked at Mo Yunjue, and for a moment, they didn't know how to answer. Logically speaking, with such a powerful cultivator joining their team, they would naturally welcome him. However, Mo Yunjue didn't stay in a large Empire's team. Instead, he came to join their team. This was too strange, wasn't it? For a moment, everyone couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Come to think of it, there was only one reason why Mo Yunjue wanted to join them, and that was Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Mo Yunjue and asked, "Why did you join our team? I'm your friend, so it's easier for me to get along with you." Mo Yunjue said with a natural expression. Qianfeng Dynasty is a large dynasty team. It will be more convenient for you to stay in your own team. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said. Speaking of which, Mo Yunjue had always been an enigma to her. However, one thing she was certain of was that Mo Yunjue had no ill intentions towards them. "I like challenges and adventures," Mo Yunjue replied. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue speechlessly and then said, "The real reason." Seeing this, Mo Yunjue sighed helplessly. "Well, I don't get along well with those guys. They're all arrogant people. No one is willing to submit to anyone. It's too troublesome." Hearing this, Xiao Jiqing and the others understood. Qianfeng Dynasty's national strength was so strong. The cultivators it selected were naturally very strong. These geniuses had always been aloof and gathered in a team. Obviously, No one would be willing to submit to them. Not to mention Qianfeng Dynasty. Even some small dynasty teams would have such a situation. The internal problems of Qianfeng Dynasty should be more obvious. Chapter 1370. Speaking of which, among the teams participating in the assessment, there were very few teams that could be as united as the Tiangang Dynasty. This was the most profound feeling that Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman had after joining Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Thinking back to when they were in the Snow Origin Dynasty team, Zhu Weiqing's opinions were always contrary to theirs, and every time there was inevitably a conflict. It was just that he and Xiaoman didn't want things to get out of hand, so they often chose to endure. Boss, if young Master Mo is not happy in the Qianfeng Dynasty team, then let him join us, Xia Jiqing slowly said. Moreover, with young Master Mo as a master, the strength of our team can be enhanced. Although she hadn't seen Mo Yunjue fight, she could judge that Mo Yunjue was definitely not weak. Miss Xia is right. We are friends, and forming a team together is also an excellent choice, right? Mo Yunjue smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang. Since knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to participate in the assessment, he immediately chose to participate in the assessment. The assessment had already begun for a few months, and he had been looking for Bailey Hongzhuang, but he didn't get any news. Now that he finally found Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't just leave like this. Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. She always felt that the reason was not so simple. Is it really like this? Mo Yunjue nodded seriously. Of course it is true. It is rare to meet in this assessment. Isn't it a kind of fate? Master, this Mo Yunjue joining the team is also good. The deeper we go into the center of the small world, the stronger the cultivators we will encounter in the future. This Mo Yunjue is very strong. With him joining the team, the strength of the team will be improved a lot. Xiaohei smiled. Xiaobai glanced at Mo Yunjue and said to Bailey Hongzhuang, Master, I think this guy has taken a liking to you. As Xiaobai finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned for a moment. A helpless expression appeared on her face. He knows that I've already married Beichen. She had never hidden the news of her marriage with Di Beichen from anyone. From the moment she accepted Di Beichen, she never had any other thoughts. Hearing this, Xiaobai nodded. That's true. Then what are you worried about? In any case, Mo Yunjue won't harm us. Xiaohei was very calm. If Mo Yunjue wanted to harm them, he could have done it back then. There was no need for him to wait until now. If young Master Mo is willing, then join our team, Gong Xiaoqing slowly said. Back then, Mo Yunjue had done them a great favor. If they could repay Mo Yunjue now, that would be something they were willing to do. Mo Yunjue's handsome face broke into a joyful smile. Thank you very much. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue helplessly. In fact, she really could not find a reason to reject. If Mo Yunjue really needed help, as long as she could do it, she would not reject. In the future, our team will officially be promoted to a middle-tier empire team. Bai Junyu smiled. With this number of people, in addition to Xiaohei, Xiaobai, and Bai Shi, their numbers would be close to that of a large empire team. Chapter 1371. Qianfeng Dynasty. Young Lord just joined Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Will he be in danger? A cultivator's face was filled with worry. Bailey Hongzhuang's team, including the young master, only had 8 people. There were many powerful cultivators in this assessment competition. Even if young Lord was powerful, he might not be able to fend off others. Moreover, young Lord still had to protect Bailey Hongzhuang. Young Lord told us to stay here obediently. Let's stay here obediently. In my opinion, we should carefully follow behind young Lord and try not to be discovered. If young Lord is in danger, we can also help. How can it be so simple? Young Lord has already told us not to disturb him. If young Lord's sweetheart finds out, young Lord will definitely blame us. For a moment, the cultivators from Qianfeng Dynasty had a bitter expression. In fact, they didn't need to participate in this assessment competition at all. It was just that young lord suddenly said that he wanted to participate in the assessment competition, so they came. Speaking of which, young lord just wanted to see his sweetheart. After so many years, it's rare to see young lord like someone. We must support him. As soon as one of the cultivators finished speaking, the others nodded in agreement. They participated in the assessment competition, this time to give young lord and his sweetheart more opportunities to be together. After a few months, the young master had finally found his sweetheart. They couldn't affect the young master. Xin Yuan Huan and the others also heard the conversation of the cultivators from Qianfeng dynasty. Their expressions changed again and again. Bailey Haoshuan was speechless. How did the cultivators from Qianfeng dynasty come to participate in the assessment competition? They were obviously here to pursue Bailey Hongzhuang. Moreover, the man just now was actually their young lord. To be able to be called young lord in a powerful dynasty like Qianfeng dynasty, it was enough to show how extraordinary that man was. In comparison, they were simply dregs. Xin Yuan Huan's expression changed a little. Everything was as he had guessed before. That man also had feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Back then, she was merely the daughter of a small dynasty's general. Now, even an extraordinary figure from a large dynasty had to spare no effort to woo her. The distance between them was indeed an insurmountable chasm. Thinking of this, the smile on Xin Yuan Huan's face became even more bitter. Even though he knew that there was no hope, his heart still ached every time he thought about it. Time gradually passed, and the night quietly passed. For the entire night, not a single demonic beast appeared. Everyone was waiting for the restriction to end with rapt attention. In comparison, the cultivators from the large empires were the calmest. The cultivators from the medium empires were extremely excited. On the other hand, the cultivators from the small empires were constantly looking around, hoping to be the first to notice the opening of the ruins. As the sky gradually brightened up, many cultivators had already exited their cultivation state and focused their mental powers on the ruins in front of them. The enormous ruins were several times larger than the ruins that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had seen last time. The golden ruins exuded a noble and majestic aura. Chapter 1372. Outside this magnificent ruin, a faint layer of golden light was faintly discernible. As the breeze blew, ripples appeared. However, such a layer of light that seemed easy to break was extremely hard. In the process of waiting for the restriction to dissipate, there were many cultivators who tried to forcibly break through this layer of restriction, but in the end, they all returned without success. The restriction laid down by the owner of the ruin was not easy to break, and its power was far beyond everyone's imagination. This ruin is really huge. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but stand up. Looking at the huge ruin in front of her, her face was full of emotion. Because it was night when they came, she didn't look at the ruin carefully. Now that she looked carefully, she felt the huge shock. Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces were full of amazement. The strength of these strong cultivators was really amazing. It took a lot of effort to create such a ruin, not to mention the inheritance in this ruin. The bigger the ruin, the greater the risk inside. Everyone should be extra careful. Mo Yunjue saw that everyone was immersed in the magnificence of the ruin, and he couldn't help but remind them. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised and looked at Mo Yunjue faintly. It seemed that Mo Yunjue also had a certain understanding of this ruin. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Mo Yunjue still smiled faintly. The dangers of ancient ruins are recorded in many ancient books. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded. Ancient ruins were extremely extraordinary existences, but for them, the most important thing was to be alive to obtain the treasures inside. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivators around her. As the sky became brighter, many cultivators could be seen clearly. Master, Han Shilling hasn't appeared yet. Could it be that he won't come? Xiao He frowned. It was reasonable to say that Han Shilling would not come with such a good opportunity. However, the ruins were about to open, but there was still no sign of Han Shilling. This was very strange. Considering how annoying Han Shieling is, he might have offended some powerful cultivators in the past few months. He might even be on his way to meet the King of Hell, said Xiaobai. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes, deep as a pool, flashed with a thoughtful light. She wrinkled her nose. No one could be sure of the current situation. As long as Han Shieling isn't dead, we'll meet him sooner or later in this small world. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. Ever since she first met Han Shieling, the conflict between them had become more and more intense. If he waited until he returned to Tiangang's sect to solve it, it would undoubtedly become troublesome. With the existence of the Great Elder, Han Shiling's position was not easy to shake. Therefore, the best way to deal with Han Shieling during the assessment was to deal with him. Xiao He and Xiao Bai nodded together. God has eyes. He won't let that woman continue to be free. Look, the restriction is getting lighter and lighter. At this time, a surprised voice came into everyone's ears. Immediately afterward, many figures sitting on the ground stood up one after another, their eyes fixed on the constantly fluctuating restriction. In everyone's eyes, the golden restriction was getting lighter and lighter, and the energy ripples were gradually weakening. It was obvious that it was about to completely dissipate. Chapter 1373. Her beautiful face was calm and dignified. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and looked at Xia Zhiqing and the others, her light voice full of seriousness. The ancient ruins are about to open. After we go in, try not to disperse and listen to all the arrangements. According to her understanding of the ancient ruins, this ruin was so huge that there would be a lot of treasures inside. Similarly, there would be more dangers. If they only wanted to grab the treasures, it was very likely that they would lose their lives there. Only by being careful and calmly facing all the situations could it be possible to leave the ancient ruins safely. Mo Yunjua looked at the calm and serious Bailey Hongzhuang at the moment, and his deep dark eyes were filled with a touch of appreciation. In such a situation, Bailey Hongzhuang's leadership and commanding ability were completely revealed. The serious Bailey Hongzhuang exuded an indescribable charm. She was so young, but she gave people a feeling of iron bones, making people unable to ignore her. She was always so dazzling that people could notice her at the first moment, and their eyes could not move for a long time. Just like the first time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was so calm and brave, far from what an ordinary woman could have. Boss, we understand, Yuan Xiaoman responded. Although she was very excited to see the ancient ruins for the first time, she also understood the danger that the boss was talking about. According to the information she had learned before, every time the ancient ruins opened, it was unknown how many cultivators fell in it. If they were not careful, it would be difficult to come out alive. Gong Shaoqing and the others' faces were also serious, and the original excitement were completely thrown out of their minds. The opening of the ruins did not mean that they could get treasures. This was just the beginning. Looking at everyone's calm appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang was also relieved that they were not blinded by excitement. After a stick of incense, under everyone's expectant eyes, the last trace of the restriction finally dissipated completely. The ancient ruins really appeared in front of everyone, and the huge palace door seemed to have a mysterious power, deeply attracting everyone present. The ruins are open. Everyone go in. The moment the ruins opened, many cultivators rushed towards the ruins like locusts. It was as if he was a second late. The treasures inside would not be fated with him. Boss, let's go. Seeing that everyone had started to move, Yuan Jixin also spoke out. The treasures in these ruins were all ownerless, so it was always first come, first served. If one was late, they would always be at a disadvantage. Wait a moment. Just as everyone was about to set off, Mo Yunjue's voice suddenly rang out. Everyone couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. They didn't know what Mo Yunjue wanted. When the door to the ruins opens, there might be some kind of mechanism. Let's wait for a while before going in. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Mo Yunjue and then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was their real captain. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. then let's wait for a while. It's not too late for us to act after someone goes in. She believed that since Mo Yunju said so, he must have his reasons. Chapter 1374. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, the smile on Mo Yunjue's lips widened as he leaned closer to Bailey Hongzhuang's ear and laughed. I didn't expect you to trust me so much. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her eyes and looked at Mo Yunjue speechlessly. You're thinking too much. I'm just being careful. Mo Yunjue didn't take Bailey Hongzhuang's words to heart, and the smile in his eyes deepened. In the forest far away, a green figure's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really shameless. She usually pretends to be virtuous, but I thought she was sincere towards a young sect head. I didn't expect her to hook up with another man after participating in the assessment for just a few months. How shameless! Wu Yuexin's face was filled with disgust. For the past few days, they had been searching for Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Initially, their baffling disappearance had already shocked them greatly, and until now, they still didn't know what had happened. During the assessment, they didn't receive any news from Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, and this made them especially angry. Most importantly, there were originally quite a number of cultivators representing Tiangang's sect, but after splitting into two, there weren't that many of them. Along the way, most of the dynasty's teams had treated them as a middle-sized dynasty's team, and this really infuriated them. That's right, the first time I saw Bailey Hongzhuang, I knew she was a seductive woman. If not, why would young sect master choose her? With her ability, I'm afraid it would be difficult for her to perform well in the assessment, so she can only rely on other men. What a pity if young sect master was here. He would be able to see Bailey Hongzhuang's unbearable side. Han Xiling stared at the white figure in front of him as his eyes were filled with unprecedented hatred. Damned woman! Han Xiling clenched her fists tightly. The past few months in the small world was the most miserable period of her life. Almost no one believed that they were representing Tiangang's sect's team because there were just too few of them. Only the cultivators who were representing other sects to participate in the assessment could confirm their identities because she had followed her grandfather to many sects and knew quite a number of cultivators. However, now that she had met these cultivators, she could only run away. This was because she couldn't meet anyone in her current situation. Ever since that day when Bailey Hongzhuang used the silver needle on her, she had become a mute. She had hoped that she could recover after a period of time, but after such a long time, her throat didn't get better. To think that she, the dignified Han Xiling, had become a mute. If the cultivators who knew her, wouldn't she become a joke? Therefore, she definitely couldn't let the other cultivators. Therefore, under such circumstances, their days were extremely difficult. She only hoped that she could find Bailey Hongzhuang quickly and let Bailey Hongzhuang recover her throat. After not speaking for a few months, she had almost forgotten how to speak. Chapter 1375. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows furrowed slightly. She vaguely felt a pair of eyes staring at her. Turning her gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the forest behind her. However, the lush greenery made it impossible for people to see clearly, so she didn't take it seriously. Now that everyone's attention was on the ancient ruins, how could there be cultivators paying attention to her? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze, a burst of exclamations came from the front of the ruins. Everyone looked forward and saw the cultivators who rushed forward immediately after the restriction disappeared. After opening the door of the relic, countless sharp arrows flew out from the relic. Many cultivators didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Caught off guard, they were directly shot by the arrows and lost their lives. In the eyes of everyone, a large group of cultivators fell to the ground one after another. The arrows pierced their bodies and didn't give them any chance at all. In a short time, the door of the ruins had been stained with blood. A faint smell of blood filled the air, making people shudder. Looking at this sudden scene, many cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. Heavens, this ancient era's ruin is too terrifying. We haven't even entered yet, and so many cultivators have already fallen. The situation inside must be even more terrifying. Yes, once we go in, I'm afraid we may not be able to come back alive. The owner of the ruins is really ruthless. The treasures inside are definitely not easy to take. This sudden scene made many cultivators terrified. For a while, they didn't have the courage to enter again. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw this scene, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue beside her. She didn't expect Mo Yunjue's judgment to be so accurate. There was indeed a mechanism at the door. At this moment, Xia Jiqing and the others understood why Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were not in a hurry to set off immediately. It turned out that there was such a danger. Young Master Mo, you are really amazing. You can even judge this. Dongfang Yu looked at Mo Yunjue with surprise. Before this, there was no sign of a white dot on the door of the ruins. Mo Yunjue was actually able to judge it. This was not easy. Everyone's eyes fell on Mo Yunjue. Just from Mo Yunjue's ability to judge the danger, they couldn't help but admire Mo Yunjue. I just remembered that there was such a rule in the ancient book when I read it before. In fact, I'm not sure, but I felt that it was best to be careful, so I stopped everyone from moving forward. Mo Yunjue's smile was modest, and his side appearance as if he really was just trying his luck. Following Mo Yunjue's words, Gong Shaoqing and the others nodded. There were indeed some records in some ancient books. Reading 10,000 books to travel 10,000 miles, this was really a good point. If Mo Yunjue didn't happen to know this, they might have been in danger. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of exploration. She remembered Mo Yunjue's calm manner when he said this. She believed that Mo Yunjue must have judged it before he said such a thing. With Mo Yunjue's identity, he definitely wouldn't speak without thinking. Chapter 1376. With so many cultivators dying all of a sudden, many cultivators who wanted to enter the ruins could not help but stop in their tracks. The entrance of the ruins had just been opened, and they had already encountered such a terrifying attack. After they really walked into the ruins, they were afraid that there would be even more terrifying attacks. For a while, the cultivators who were originally close to the entrance of the ruins also retreated at this moment. After all, no one wanted to die. They just wanted to wait for someone to enter safely before they went in. Let's go in. Mo Yunjue's long eyebrows were slanted. His eyes were deep and confident. His lips evoked a charming smile as he looked directly at Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly, and the two's eyes collided. Okay. With that, Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang walked forward together. Xia Jiqing and the others followed closely, but they were not as calm as Bailey Hongzhuang. Young Master Mo, if we enter the ruins now, will there be more powerful attacks inside? Xia Jiqing's eyebrows could not hide the worry in her eyes. No one knew what the situation in the ruins was like. All of this was simply impossible to guard against. Although Gong Shaoqing and the others did not speak, they were also worried in their hearts. Now they were in the light, and the master of the ruins' mechanism was in the dark. If there was a trap inside, they would be completely a target as soon as they went in. They would only be courting death. Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a smile. His eyes that were as deep as a black hole flickered with confidence. His low and magnetic voice was filled with a reassuring power. According to my understanding, usually when the entrance of the ruins is opened, there will be the first wave of attack, and then there will be no problem entering. If the master of the ruins really arranged mechanisms everywhere, then who can get the inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom. The design of the mechanism was often arranged by the master of the ruins at will. However, everything was as Mo Yunjue said. Usually, the master of the ruins would not arrange the mechanisms together. This was because once the traps appeared one after another, there would be countless deaths and injuries. It would be extremely difficult to successfully walk inside. The reason why the master of the ruins had set up the mechanism was to select a suitable successor, not to take people's lives. In fact, her thoughts were the same as Mo Yunjues. Entering now might be an opportunity. However, Mo Yunjue was obviously more certain than she was. Riches and honor were sought in the midst of danger. Since that was the case, then they would give it their all. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest slowly approached the entrance of the ruins, almost all the cultivators had their eyes fixed on them. These guys are really gutsy. They still dare to rush up now. There's an 80 to 90% chance that they're courting death again. It's good to have such fellows. Let them scout the way first. We'll go in when it's safe. That's true. Isn't it courting death for a mid-tier dynasty team to rush up and pretend to be almighty? Everyone chuckled, but their eyes were locked onto Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. As long as they entered, they would be able to judge the situation inside the ruins, so they would be mentally prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others really want treasures more than their lives. Chapter 1377. Xinyuan Huan's eyes were filled with worry. The ancient ruins in front of them were no longer a tempting treasure, but an infinite danger. It was too dangerous for Bailey Hongzhuang to go to the ruins now. However, he was in no position to talk to Bailey Hongzhuang, so he could only watch from the side. This Bailey Hongzhuang's courage is really not small. The man beside her is also willing to risk his life for her. Wu Yuexin frowned. If Bailey Hongzhuang could die in the ruins, it would be the best choice. However, she couldn't understand why the man would choose to go with Bailey Hongzhuang. He was obviously courting death. Bailey Hongzhuang's team has 3 more people than before. I don't know when these 3 people joined. The man beside Wu Yuexin noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's team. When Bailey Hongzhuang's team left, there were only 5 people in the team. I think she just randomly recruited 3 people from a small empire's team. Wu Yuexin said coldly. Seeing Wu Yuexin's obvious disdain for Bailey Hongzhuang, the other cultivators could only put away their doubts. In this assessment, it seemed like it was easy to recruit 2 cultivators, but in reality, it was not easy. Not to mention that ordinary cultivators wouldn't leave their own team. Cultivators who were left alone were usually too weak. Most importantly, they didn't know the background of the new cultivators and couldn't trust them. Their team didn't have many people. They had thought of recruiting some cultivators, but the others didn't believe them. The Intermediate Empire's team wouldn't be willing to merge with them, and the Small Empire's team wasn't good enough for them. They thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's team would have a worse time with only 5 people, but they didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's team to be in the same situation as them. This kind of psychological disparity really made people feel uncomfortable. Under everyone's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's team slowly walked to the entrance of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang's footsteps paused, and she said, "You wait outside the door, Mo Yunjue, and I will go in and see the situation." Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Mo Yunjue and said, "Do you have any objections?" Mo Yunjue's lips curled, and he raised his eyebrows. "Since you've said so, how would I dare to have any objections?" However, Gong Xiaoqing spoke first. "Hongzhuang, let's go in together. How can we let the 2 of you take the risk?" Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had been taking care of them, but he was older than Bailey, so he should take care of Bailey Hongzhuang. In such a situation, he couldn't agree to Bailey Hongzhuang's team going in first. As Gong Xiaoqing's voice fell, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded. "Boss, Gong Xiaoqing is right. Since we are a team, we should take the risk together." Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was warm, and she said, "Mo Yunjue and I are stronger. If there is really danger, we have a higher chance of avoiding it. This kind of unnecessary risk is not necessary. Besides, the risk is very small." Chapter 1378. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's team was so united, Mo Yunjue's smile deepened. It had to be said that in this assessment competition, there weren't many teams that were as united as the Tiangang Dynasty's team. "Don't worry, there won't be any problems." Mo Yunjue chuckled. "I'll go in first. Wait till I'm sure there's no problem before you all come in." As he spoke, Mo Yunjue strode into the remains. "Wait, Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to stop him, but before she could finish her sentence, Imo Yunjue had already walked in. Seeing this, Gong Shaoqing and the rest were stunned. They didn't expect Imo Yunjue to walk in just like that. Even though Imo Yunjue was sure that there wouldn't be any traps, but no one could guarantee that. However, the fact that Imo Yunjue walked in directly proved many things. If it was any other person, the other party wouldn't have done so. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest to recover from their shock, Imo Yunjue's voice rang out in the hall. "No problem, come in." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked into the remains. Just as they walked in, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Imo Yunjue's handsome face, which was full of smiles. "Can you rest assured now?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked speechlessly at Imo Yunjue, but her eyes flashed with a strange light. Imo Yunjue's earlier actions had shocked her. Such a risky action. Imo Yunjue was too crazy. "If you continue to disobey the arrangements, I won't allow you to continue staying in the team." Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Imo Yunjue, her clear eyes filled with seriousness. From the beginning to the end, Imo Yunjue had helped them too much. She couldn't let Imo Yunjue take more risks. Imo Yunjue saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so serious. He immediately raised his right hand and said seriously, "Okay, next time I'll definitely obey Captain Bailey's arrangements." Huffed, Yuan Xiaoman couldn't help but laugh. Such a Imo Yunjue was really interesting. Xia Jiqing and the others also laughed. Obviously, Imo Yunjue was also a very interesting person. Okay, let's move on. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't dwell on this matter too much. They had finally entered the remains. Naturally, they had to start searching for treasures. Listening to the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, everyone also came back to their senses. Originally, they only thought that they would enter the monument very late. They did not expect that they would be the first to enter the monument. This was really fate. "Ah!" Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly screamed. Dongfang Yu and the others were stunned for a moment. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly, only thinking that Bailey Hongzhuang had been attacked. However, Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand at the crowd and pointed her finger outside the door of the monument. Suddenly, Xia Jiqing and the others understood. "Ah!" Xia Jiqing also screamed. Bang! Bai Junyu's figure fell to the ground. The movements of Yuan Jixin and the others were not slow. Since they wanted to pretend, they naturally had to pretend. Outside the ruins, as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the ruins, all the cultivators' eyes were fixed on the ruins. They wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would encounter any danger after entering. Chapter 1379. I knew that these guys would be throwing their lives away if they went. This ruin is too difficult to deal with. They can't enter at all. What treasures do they want? Everyone sighed helplessly. They thought that they were lucky to encounter such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Who would have thought that the real situation turned out to be like this? Xin Yuan Huan's face became ugly. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would really have an accident. Speaking of which, so many things had happened before. He actually didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang have an accident. He only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could live peacefully. Bailey Haoxuan's face also changed a little. Although he had a lot of opinions about Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would die in the ruin. It was really shocking. Haha, Bailey Hongzhuang really dug her own grave. Wu Yuexin's face showed a carefree smile. The trace of anger after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared with Bailey Hongzhuang's death. God is really fair. We don't need to do anything. Bailey Hongzhuang has already died. Wu Yuexin turned to look at Han Xiling. She thought that Han Xiling would show a happy smile like her, but she didn't expect that Han Xiling's face would become extremely ugly. "Miss Han, what's wrong?" Wu Yuexin asked with concern. Han Xiling's face was pale. She naturally hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would die, but she didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to die now. At least, before Bailey Hongzhuang died, her throat had to be cured. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang was dead, didn't that mean that she could only be a mute for at least 2 years in the assessment competition? Just these few months, She had been driven crazy by this feeling, thinking that she would be in this situation for more than a year. It was too unbearable. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang's trick was so strange. She had never seen anyone use such a method. If after leaving the small world, no one could cure her throat, then she might become a mute for the rest of her life. The more she thought, the paler Han Shiling's face became. Damn Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if she died, she still brought so much trouble to her. The other cultivators beside Han Shiling had already understood her thoughts after thinking for a while. Speaking of which, Han Shiling was really miserable now. Since that day, when Bailey Hongzhuang and others disappeared from their sight, Han Shiling kept looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in the end, it was all in vain. The current Han Shiling couldn't be compared to the Han Shiling in Tiangang sect. Even their feelings towards her had changed a little. If Han Shiling really became a mute, then her previous prestige would be gone. In the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang and others looked at each other, and a smile appeared on their faces. Thinking about it, their trick should be able to scare a lot of cultivators. At least, they would hesitate for a while before coming in. This also bought them some time. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice. Chapter 1380. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gradually moved forward. In the eyes of everyone, the whole monument was just like what they saw from the outside. It was magnificent, giving people an indescribable feeling of magnificence. Every brick on the ground had exquisite lines. Walking in this palace, it was as if they had become a noble. Wow, this monument is really more magnificent than the palace. Xia Jiqing looked at everything around her. This feeling of magnificence made people feel like they were in a dream. The palaces she had seen were really not as magnificent as this one. Yuan Xiaoman nodded in agreement. Her face was full of amazement. This is a monument. It's really better to see it than to hear about it 100 times. The owner of this monument should also be a noble. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with amazement. It was the first time she had seen such a magnificent monument. Every layout inside was obviously carefully prepared, gorgeous and noble. This was the favorite of some nobles, and only the real nobles would have such a taste. Mo Yunjue looked around and said, "I think so too. Master, this monument is very large. The valuable things should be in the depths." Xiao Hei's voice sounded. It was not the first time she had seen a monument. Every monument had such characteristics. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, putting away her original amazement and speculation, and quietly quickened her pace. Let's go in quickly. Although the trick just stopped the footsteps of other cultivators, there are many cultivators who are not afraid of death. It won't be long before the cultivators find all this. At that time, all the cultivators will rush in, and our good opportunity will not exist. Bailey Hongzhuang said aloud. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others also nodded in agreement and quickened their pace towards the depths of the monument. After walking for a while, a small hall appeared in front of everyone. There was nothing in the hall, but there were 2 roads on both sides of the hall. Obviously, everyone could only choose one of these 2 roads. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the 2 paths. However, the 2 paths were exactly the same, like mirrors. Even the lines on the bricks were exactly the same, making it difficult for her to tell. The owner of the ruins seems to have a high requirement for perfection. Every arrangement here is perfect to the extreme. When Mo Yunjue saw this scene, his pitch-black eyes were filled with astonishment and doubt. This kind of situation was rarely seen on a normal day. Bailey Hongzhuang paid attention to everything inside. She had a very strange feeling in her heart. She couldn't tell what it was, but she always felt that this ruin was different. Which path should we take? Bai Junyu asked. Right now, they didn't have much time to think. Every bit of time they wasted here meant that they had less time left. The one on the left. The one on the left. 2 voices sounded at the same time. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard the same judgment as her, she couldn't help but look at the other side in surprise. Mo Yunjue's lips curved into a smile. It seems that our judgment is the same. Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes at Mo Yunjue. At this time, he was still in the mood to talk. In that case, let's take the road on the left, Gong Xiaoqing said slowly. Chapter 1381. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked into the passageway on the left. Apart from the sound of their footsteps, there was no other sound in the entire palace. It was so quiet that it was rather frightening. This passageway was very long, so Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not move very quickly. This was because they did not know if there would be any hidden mechanisms. Hence, every step they took was done carefully. This passageway is really long. Xiaohei sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder with a puzzled look on her face. The last time they had entered the ancient ruins, they had seen many stone chambers upon entering. The stone chambers were filled with all sorts of treasures. However, they had walked quite a distance since they had entered the ruins, but they had not seen anything at all. Even though the surface area of the ruins was much larger than the area they had seen the last time, this situation was still rather strange. It was not only Xiaohei, but Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had the same feeling as well. Along the way, they felt as if they could not see the end. Outside the ruins, many cultivators remained on the spot as they stared at the dazzling golden ruins. Their eyes were filled with yearning and fear. After a period of stagnation, some cultivators chose to move forward again. Everyone knew that entering the ancient ruins carried risks. However, with such a huge treasure right in front of them, no one was willing to give up just like that. However, as the next group of cultivators approached, the danger that they had expected did not appear. On the contrary, they had entered the ruins without a hitch. After a brief moment of shock, the crowd began to react. Damn it, we've been tricked. Then, the crowd did not stay any longer and immediately walked into the depths of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had entered earlier than them. If the treasures were to be snatched away by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they would suffer a great loss. Han Xiling and the rest stood outside the ruins and waited for the situation to unfold. To them, the treasures in the ruins were naturally important, but their lives were more important. Especially Han Xiling. She already holds a high position in the Tiangang sect and has no lack of cultivation resources on a daily basis. It would be foolish of them to lose their lives for the sake of the ruins. However, after seeing the crowd of cultivators rushing into the ruins, Han Xiling and the rest's expressions changed. There are no traps in the ruins. We've been tricked by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Wu Yuexin was the first to react. His originally carefree mood was instantly suppressed. Han Xiling waved his hand, and Wu Yuexin and the rest immediately rushed into the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had already taken the treasures. If they did not rush over there, the treasures would have been taken away by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. After Xinyuan Huan learned of all this, he was also surprised, but more than that, he was relieved. At least, Bailey Hongzhuang at this point, he could not help but admire Bailey Hongzhuang's success. With just a small trick, she had deceived so many cultivators. It was truly amazing. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked for a while, they finally saw the tightly shut stone rooms on both sides of the road. After seeing this scene, a happy smile appeared on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They thought that there must be treasures in this stone room. Bang! Chapter 1382. The door of this stone room is really difficult to open. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes showed a touch of surprise. Although he did not use all of his strength in that attack, he still used about 50% of his strength. It was a bit strange that the door of the stone room could not be opened. Let's try again, Xia Jiqing quickly said. Boom! Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fengyu attacked together. This time, both of them used 100% of their strength. However, under the attack of Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fengyu, the door of the stone room still did not move. It seems that there should be a mechanism here. Unless we find a mechanism, I'm afraid that brute force will not be able to open the door of this stone room. Mo Yunjue's deep and magnetic voice rang out, and a serious look appeared on his handsome face. The strength of Gu Hongqing and Dongfang Yu was not weak. If it was an ordinary stone room door, it would have already been opened under the bombardment of the two of them. However, after these two attacks, the door of the stone room still did not change, which proved everything. With the strength of the master of the monument, if he did not want to use brute force to open the door of the stone room, then no matter what they tried, it would be useless. Unless their strength reached a certain level, they would not be able to break it by force. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly narrowed, and she nodded lightly. We have to work hard to find the mechanism. As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang had already looked around the stone room door, hoping to find the mechanism. Xia Jiqing and the others also groped around. Just like the last time in the monument, they had learned that they could not ignore anything. The thoughts of the master of the monument were often arbitrary, so they could not miss a single detail. Time ticked by, and everyone kept touching every part of the stone room. However, there was no protrusion, no recess, and no hollow space. What kind of mechanism is this? After looking for so long, there is no mechanism at all. Yuan Xiaoman frowned, and there was a bit of impatience in her voice. It was not easy for them to seize the opportunity and enter the monument before the other cultivators, but now they could not enter the stone room door at all. In this kind of race against time, time was delayed like this. One could imagine the depression in his heart. Yuan Jixin patted Yuan Xiaoman's shoulder and said, "As long as we can get one of the treasures inside, it will be very difficult, so don't worry." Yuan Jixin is right. We must calm down and search. There must be a mechanism. Dongfang Yu immediately said. The last time he entered the ancient ruins, he was in the same state as Yuan Xiaoman. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang discovered the existence of the mechanism in front of everyone, he understood that it was not that there was no mechanism, but that they had overlooked it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue both stood in place without moving. Not only did they land around the stone door, their faces were filled with contemplation. Bailey Hongzhuang rubbed her chin with her right hand. Every brick in this stone room was exactly the same. In addition, everyone had already searched for the existence of grooves and protrusions, but they still couldn't find anything. Thus, the location of the mechanism really made everyone curious. Where exactly is it? Chapter 1383. Master, the owner of this ruin is very meticulous. Not only are the bricks the same, even the patterns on the bricks are the same. Even the layout is exactly the same. It's so symmetrical that it looks like a fake. Xiaohei was secretly speechless. It felt that the owner of this ruin could very well be a woman. If it had been a man, he would not have been in the mood to pay attention to all this. It simply could not imagine how much time the owner of this ruin had taken to build this ruin. Just looking at it gave it a sense of incredulity. As Xiaohei spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up as if she had found the most important key. Everything is the same. Could there be something different? Bailey Hongzhuang mumbled. Things will move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. This was the law of many things. In a ruin like this, where everything was so orderly, the slightest difference could be the biggest problem. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately began to search for the difference at the thought of this. Everything was just as Xiaohei had said. Everything here was symmetrical and balanced. Even the height of the patterns were exactly the same. There was not the slightest bit of deviation. Thud, thud, thud. A series of footsteps were heard from behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Gong Xiaoqing and the others' expressions changed. They never thought that the other cultivators would arrive so quickly. Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look behind them. The cultivators who came later had saved a lot of time compared to them on the way here. This was because once there was a mechanism, they would find corpses. However, they had not seen a single drop of blood along the way. This proved that everything here was safe. Because of this, the cultivators behind them had arrived so quickly. Damn it, these fellows sure are fast. Bai Jinyu secretly spat. Once the other cultivators arrive, it would mean that the competition between them would become much more intense. The cultivators' eyes lit up when they saw Bai Junyu and the others. They're over there. A group of cultivators rushed over. In fact, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others standing in front of the door of the stone room and did not enter, they were overjoyed. Although this group of people had entered much earlier than them, they still hadn't obtained anything. Naturally, they didn't have to be envious. The impatience on the faces of Yuan Xiaoman and the others became more and more obvious, while Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were firmly locked on the side of the door, not panicking because of the cultivators coming from behind. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward, her right hand directly touching an ordinary brick on the right side of the stone door. Rumble. A dull sound sounded, and Xia Jiqing and the others were stunned to find that the stone door that had been closed opened, and Bailey Hongzhuang was directly shrouded in a golden light and was directly sucked into the stone room. Xia Jiqing and the others immediately wanted to go in, but they found that a yellow light on the door of the stone room blocked them and did not let them go in. Remember to find the difference in the lines. At the moment when Bailey Hongzhuang was sucked into the stone room, her voice clearly passed into the ears of Xia Jiqing and the others. Boom! Chapter 1384. Xia Jiqing and the others stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang entering the stone room. The surprise in their hearts did not dissipate for a long time. There was actually such a strange way. Whoever opened the door of the monument, who could enter it? Others had no way to enter at all. Although this method was very strange, it was particularly fair and even reduced the situation of fighting with others. If the door of a stone room was opened and everyone could rush in, then there would be a big fight. Obviously, this was not the case now. Let's not waste time. Quickly find a way to open the other stone rooms. When everyone was amazed, Mo Yunjue's voice had sounded. Speaking of which, their situation was undoubtedly much better than the other cultivators. At least, they had found a way to open the door of the stone room. Good. Gong Xiaoqing and the others nodded. Now is not the time to sigh. There were all kinds of treasures in the stone room. It was rare to have such an opportunity. They naturally had to seize the time. When the cultivators at the back saw Bailey Hongzhuang entering the stone room, their faces could not help but show a nervous look. The treasures in the monument were one less. They had to speed up. In a short time, a group of cultivators had rushed over, and Mo Yunjue and the others each stood in front of the stone room door. Since only one cultivator could enter each stone room, they had no choice but to split up. When the cultivators who arrived in front of the stone room saw Mo Yunjue and the others, although they were very dissatisfied with being deceived before, they were not in the mood to care about all this. They just crowded in front of the door, looking around for a way to enter the stone room. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. The sound of attack sounded. Almost all the cultivators, when they saw the closed stone room door, their first thought was to force it open. However, the final result was the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had tried before. It was useless at all. While the other cultivators were using this method to break through the door, the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were standing quietly at the side, searching for a different existence. Suddenly, Mo Yunjue stepped forward, his figure jumped, and his right hand hit the top of the stone room door. Rumble! The door of the stone room slowly opened. The stone room door that had not been opened for years was also filled with dust when it opened. The stone room door is open. When the cultivators on the side saw the stone room door open, they did not care about the falling dust and rushed inside. However, the golden light was like a barrier blocking everyone's figure. Mo Yunjue stood indifferently in the same place, looking at the group of cultivators in front of him. His lips evoked a smile, his expression even more unscrupulous. Mo Yunjue even turned around and waved at Gong Xiaoqing and the others, indicating that he was going in. When Mo Yunjue and the others saw that Mo Yunjue was the second to find the mechanism, they nodded and immediately worked harder to find it. As long as they found the mechanism, they could get the treasure. In the next moment, under the furious gazes of all the cultivators, Mo Yunjue's figure was wrapped in a golden light, and he entered the stone room directly. Chapter 1385. What the hell? What the hell is this? What kind of strange stone room is this? He's the only one who can enter? It seems that this stone room has a mechanism. Everyone, don't force your way in. After seeing Mo Yunjue enter the stone room, the other cultivators reacted one after another. Obviously, it was impossible to force their way in. The next moment, almost all the cultivators rushed to another stone room, jumped up fiercely, and reached out to the top of the stone room's door. Xia Jiqing, who was almost pushed away, saw everyone's actions, and a mocking smile appeared in her eyes. What a bunch of idiots. Not every stone room has a mechanism there. The cultivator who hit the top of the stone room's door showed a big smile on his face, and the other cultivators looked at him very enviously. After witnessing the scene just now, they understood that only one cultivator could enter each stone room. Obviously, they had no hope at all. Just as the cultivator was waiting for the stone room's door to open, Xia Jiqing hit the other side of the stone room's door. However, Xia Jiqing's hit was not as eye-catching as the cultivators, and everyone did not pay much attention to it. Hong Long Long. The stone room's door slowly opened, and the cultivator's face was full of excitement. He did not expect to open the stone room's door so easily. It was really cool. The other cultivators did not care about the stone room in front of them and immediately rushed to the stone room in front of them. If they were late, there would be no chance. The man's face could not hide his excitement, and he immediately prepared to enter the stone room. However, as soon as he touched the golden light, he was directly bounced back. Seeing this, the man's eyes were full of confusion. Just as he was about to continue to try, he saw a golden light wrap around Xia Jiqing, and then she disappeared from the stone room. The man's eyes widened, and he looked at Xia Jiqing's disappearance in disbelief. How is this possible? How did she get in? The man couldn't understand. This great opportunity had been snatched away by someone else just like that. Looking at the other stone rooms, almost all the cultivators had already hit the mechanism. Didn't this mean that he didn't have any chance at all? Just as all the cultivators were waiting for the stone door to open, they realized that there was no movement at all. Immediately, everyone's expression turned ugly. Could it be that the mechanism of the stone room isn't here? But that man clearly went in just like that. What kind of strange mechanism is this? I simply don't understand. Following that, all of the cultivators started banging on the walls, hoping to find the mechanism. When Gong Shaoqing and the others saw how these cultivators were indulging in their fantasies, their eyes were filled with mockery. This mechanism needed to be found calmly, and it was impossible to find it with such actions. Bailey Hongzhuang stood in the middle of the stone room. This huge stone room was somewhat similar to the stone room in her Primal Chaos ring. It was just that it wasn't as magnificent as this one. She had a vague feeling that this palace was the Imperial Palace because it was too shocking. The entire stone chamber was extremely empty, except for a huge brocade box placed on the high platform in the center. Chapter 1386. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked forward. The layout of this place was different from the usual historical remains. Usually, there would be many items in the stone chamber of historical remains, but there was only one item here. She believed that the value of this treasure would not be low. As she walked closer, Bailey Hongzhuang kept an eye on the situation in the stone chamber. No one could guarantee that there would not be any unexpected mechanisms. Luckily, Bailey Hongzhuang did not encounter any mechanisms until she reached the brocade box. Master, this should be the treasure in the stone chamber. Whoever opens the stone chamber will be able to obtain it. Xiaobai slowly said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and immediately opened the brocade box. She was really curious about what was in such a large brocade box. When Bailey Hongzhuang opened the brocade box, her eyes instantly lit up. Pill furnace. Wow, wow, wow. It's actually a pill furnace. Xiao Hei could not hide the excitement in her eyes. One look, and she knew that this pill furnace was not ordinary. Master is an alchemist, and all this while, Master has never had a suitable pill furnace. If the quality of his pill furnace was good enough, It would be a great weapon for Master to refine pills. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully sized up the pill furnace in front of her. The entirely black pill furnace was simple and unadorned, and had a mysterious pattern all over it. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang saw the pattern on the pill furnace, the shock in her eyes intensified. As an alchemist, she naturally had a certain level of understanding towards pill furnaces. The higher the grade of the pill furnace, the better the effect. When an alchemist was refining pills, it could increase the success rate and preserve the medicinal properties of the herbs better, resulting in a better effect. In order to achieve this, the Weapon Refinement Master and Inscription Master would work together to place inscriptions on the pill furnace that were beneficial to refining pills. The pill furnace in front of her had an array drawn on it. If she guessed correctly, this array was the extremely rare 9 Heavens Xian inscription. She had heard of this inscription long ago, but this was the first time she had seen it. Usually, pill furnaces that could be engraved with 9 Heavens Xian inscription were of excellent quality and could not be compared to ordinary pill furnaces. In this life, until now, she did not have a suitable pill furnace when refining pills. During the inter-school competition, her alchemy furnace had even exploded. Right now, the pill furnace she was using was only slightly higher grade than the one that had exploded before. She was very clear in her heart that once the grade of the pill she refined increased again, this pill furnace would not be able to last for long. And now, this pill furnace had appeared in front of her. It was undoubtedly an excellent harvest. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face blossomed into a happy smile. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at the pill furnace in front of her. This pill furnace's appearance was really too good. The palace of the master of this ruin is so big. The treasures inside must be extraordinary. Xiaohei's face was filled with joy. Previously, it had complained that the layout of the ruins was too strange. Now it did not feel that way at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Xiaohei was right. This was only the first stone room in the ruins, but there was actually a cauldron of this level. From this, one could see the quality of the treasures in this ruin. Chapter 1387. I wonder if Mo Yunjue and the rest have found the location of the mechanism? Xiaohei's lively voice was filled with curiosity and anticipation. If Mo Yunjue and the rest had entered the stone room, then everyone would have found some extraordinary treasures. They should be able to find it. Master has already told us the key to finding the mechanism. Xiaohei said slowly. Xiaohei shook her head. That may not be the case. With so many cultivators suddenly coming in, there will be a lot of variables. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes twinkled as she pondered. I can't guarantee that everyone will be able to enter the stone room, but I believe that I'm not the only one. She had confidence in her companions. Although finding the difference required a lot of observation skills, as long as they focused, they would definitely be able to find it. As for those cultivators who had rushed over, there were naturally no lack of intelligent people. However, they were more knowledgeable than the rest. Following that, Bailey Hongzhuang placed the pill furnace into her chaos ring. Clearly, now was not the time to be immersed in the joy of finding treasures. The sooner she got out of the stone room, the more treasures she would be able to find. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang walked back to the stone room's main door. However, she found that the stone room's main door was tightly shut and did not show any signs of opening. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown. She kept feeling around the stone room's main door, trying to find where the mechanism to open the door was. Since they were able to enter, they would definitely be able to leave. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang found a groove next to the main door. She pressed her finger lightly, and a sound was heard. Kacha-kacha, the sound of a mechanism turning. After hearing this sound, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately realized that it was the sound of a mechanism. She immediately looked around cautiously, not knowing if there would be any changes. However, after waiting for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the stone room's main door did not show any signs of opening. Master, the door behind us is opening. Xiaohei's sharp eyes noticed the light at the back of the stone room. It was obviously a door. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She looked at the open door, then at the tightly shut door in front of her. If possible, she hoped to return to the gate. After all, her teammates were all there. However, once they separated now, it would not be easy to see each other again in this huge ruin. Moreover, the cultivators who entered the ruins were in groups. Moving alone was undoubtedly full of risks. After seeing that the door showed no signs of opening, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer hesitated and immediately walked towards the door at the back of the ruins. Continuing to waste time here was the worst thing to do. As Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the stone room, a quiet and secluded passage appeared in front of her. The sunlight shone on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, bringing a burst of warmth. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and stared at the ray of sunlight in astonishment. Her eyes were filled with a thick sense of astonishment. I'm actually seeing sunlight in the ruins? Could it be that there's no roof here? Bailey Hongzhuang was incredulous. This was just too strange. When she was outside, she had not noticed the existence of a patio above the palace. If that was not the case, how could she possibly see sunlight here? Chapter 1388. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked forward. Even though the scene was strange, it was more important to get out and find a way to meet up with her teammates. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang chose to disguise herself. Under such circumstances, disguising herself was the safest option. After all, she was alone and the danger was not small. If she met an enemy, it would undoubtedly be a big problem. After a simple disguise, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance changed rapidly. She lost some of her alluring beauty and became more mediocre and ordinary. After confirming that there was no problem with her disguise technique, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately took a step forward and quickly walked outside. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang moved forward, a series of footsteps quietly entered her ears. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of seriousness. Bailey Hongzhuang's movements became more cautious. She lowered the sound of her footsteps, not knowing who the other party was. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang lowered the sound of her footsteps, the other party's movements were exactly the same. The sound was also lowered. It was obvious that they had both discovered each other. Bailey Hongzhuang took out her colored glaze sword. Since she had already been exposed, she could only face it head-on. It would be best if they minded their own business. However, if they wanted to fight for the treasure, they could only fight. As the distance between them got closer, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes became calmer and calmer. The origin energy in her body quietly surged, and she was ready to fight at any time. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's line of sight. After seeing the black figure, Bailey Hongzhuang's nervousness quietly dissipated. "It's you?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked in surprise. She did not expect that the person who came was actually Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue frowned. He clearly did not know the woman in front of him, but her voice was extremely familiar. "Bailey Hongzhuang?" Mo Yunjue asked in confusion. He was very familiar with Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, but her appearance was clearly different. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. However, she quickly remembered that she had disguised herself. She immediately smiled and said, "That's right, it's me." Mo Yunjue obviously did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to come. However, the moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a charming smile bloomed on his face. "We are really fated," Mo Yunjue said. Bailey Hongzhuang, she could not be bothered to Hongzhuang's teasing. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. "That's right." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind spun. Countless ideas appeared in her mind. She already had a certain guess in her heart. It seems that it's very likely that the cultivators who entered the stone room will come out from the passage and eventually gather here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. There were several passages not far from them. Obviously, they all gathered at the same place. After Mo Yunjue paid attention to the situation around him, his handsome face was full of agreement. "That's very likely. I wonder if Jiqing and the others have found the mechanism. If they're also in the stone room, then we can meet here." Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. Chapter 1389. From the words that Bailey Hongzhuang left behind after entering the stone room. They already knew the way to enter the stone room. Gong Xiaoqing and the rest were not stupid. There were more than 10 stone rooms, so the possibility of successfully entering was very high. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes brightened. If that's the case, then that's naturally the best. Let's go ahead and take a look. Mo Yunhua said slowly. I believe that the other cultivators who came out of the stone rooms will also come out immediately. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment, then nodded. Just as Mo Yunhua said, there was only one cultivator in a stone room. Not to mention that everyone could come out at different times. Even if they really met, under the situation where there was only one person on each side, most of the cultivators would choose to go their own way. After all, no one was confident enough. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunhua walked forward. After walking for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunhua suddenly realized that there was a wide, open space in front of them. However, when they saw the situation in front of them, their faces were filled with shock at the same time. In their line of sight, a dense forest appeared in front of them. The lush green trees and the faint sunlight gave Bailey Hongzhuang a faint illusion that they were in the outside world. There's a forest here? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with shock. If it was said that she had previously suspected that it was a patio, at this moment, she completely denied it. This was just like another world, and definitely not in the palace. It was impossible for a forest like this to appear in any of the palaces. The situation before his eyes was simply too shocking. Mo Yunhua also looked at everything in front of him in shock and bewilderment. This scene was really unexpected. This should be another small world, Mo Yunhua said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Mo Yunhua in surprise. However, she quickly understood. A small world within a small world? Mo Yunhua nodded. I heard that some strong cultivators would create a small world when they were building ancient ruins. This is the only explanation for the situation in front of us. I wonder what this small world means. Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. Every master of the ruins would not do something meaningless. The fact that the master of the ruins had purposely built a small world here was already enough to prove his strength. It seemed that Mo Yunhua was right. The strong cultivator who had left the ruins in this small world was the one who had built it. His dark and deep eyes flashed with a complicated light, and Mo Yunhua's face was filled with seriousness. I don't know. We can only take one step at a time. Boss, master, you're here. At this time, a happy and familiar voice sounded behind Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang. Listening to this familiar voice, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was also filled with joy. Jiqing, you're here too. Xia Jiqing quickly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said with a smile, Yes, what a coincidence. It turns out that the doors behind this stone room all lead to the same place. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I don't know if Xiaoqing and the others have entered the stone room. If they have, we can gather here and continue to move forward. Chapter 1390. Xia Jiqing kept thinking about it in her mind. She still remembered that when she found the location of the mechanism, the other cultivators were still confused and did not know where the mechanism was. She felt that not everyone was as smart as the boss. If it were her, she didn't know how long it would take to find the mechanism. Only boss would be able to see through it and quickly figure out what the problem was. On this point, she really admired the boss. Although the other cultivators saw the mechanism they found when they entered the stone room, she believed that it would take them a lot of time to find the problem. During this time, it shouldn't be difficult for Gong Xiaoqing and the others to find the mechanism. Maybe all of us have successfully entered the stone room. Mo Yunhua chuckled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Mo Yunhua. Her expression didn't change. If this was the case, then it was naturally the best result. Are you looking for us? Gong Xiaoqing's voice mixed with laughter sounded behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Hearing this familiar voice, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others turned around at the same time. They saw Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fengyu walking towards them with smiles on their faces. The team had a total of 8 people, and in this short period of time, they had already gathered 5 people. Bailey Hongzhuang was also very happy. At the very least, they had gained quite a lot from this trip to the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang had already put away her disguise. Originally, she was worried that she would be alone, so she deliberately disguised herself. Now that everyone had gathered together, her disguise was no longer needed. It seems that this time our harvest is very rich. Dong Fengyu's face was filled with a spring breeze smile. His pair of peach blossom eyes were even more attractive and charming. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and smiled. Each of them had a big harvest. Soon, Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fengyu's attention turned to the dense forest in front of them. Suddenly, a touch of astonishment climbed onto their faces. My God, there's a forest in the ruins? Dong Fengyu looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. We couldn't have directly left the ruins, right? Gong Xiaoqing's expression also changed unpredictably. Could it be that because they had obtained enough treasures from the stone room, they were allowed to leave now? Looking at Gong Xiaoqing and Dong Fengyu's stunned expressions, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. We are still in the ruins. According to Mo Yunjue's guess, this should be another small world set up by the master of the ruins. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the worried Gong Xiaoqing duo relaxed. As long as they were still in the ruins, they still had a chance to continue fighting. I wonder why you want us to enter this forest. Xia Jiqing's eyes were full of doubts. There were forests everywhere in the small world, and they had long been tired of seeing them. They did not expect that there would be a forest in the ruins. It would not be for them to hunt monsters, right? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. None of them knew the meaning of the existence of this forest. In fact, from the moment they walked into the ruins, everything had become unknown. Chapter 1391. Since more than half of us have gathered here, why don't we wait for the others here? I believe they'll be able to enter successfully. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes flashed with wisdom. Bailey Hongzhuang's words before they entered the stone room had given them a great inspiration. Although it would take some time to find it, he believed that Bai Junyu and the other 2 would be able to find the mechanism successfully. Moreover, according to what he knew, it was useless to simply tap on the wall. Unless they found the mechanism, they would only be able to open the stone room's door by touching the mechanism. This was also the reason why they could not open the stone room even after knocking on the walls. The other cultivators were confused and would not be able to find the mechanism in such a short period of time. In comparison, Bai Junyu and the other 2 had more time. As long as they were ahead of the other cultivators, they would be able to enter the stone room successfully. Perhaps they would all meet here. Hearing Gong Xiaoqing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest pondered for a moment before nodding. If they could gather here, that would be for the best. Moreover, if Bai Junyu and the other 2 were left alone, it would be very dangerous. The 5 of them stood outside the passage, waiting for Bai Junyu and the rest to appear while checking out the situation in the forest. However, the forest in front of them was exceptionally quiet and there was no movement at all. It was different from the forest in the small world. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not have to wait for long before Bai Junyu and the rest appeared behind them. Boss! Yuan Xiaoman's joyful voice was the first to be heard, and her footsteps quickened. Listening to this familiar voice, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were filled with smiles. It seemed that their judgment was right. In their line of sight, Bai Junyu, Yuan Xiaoman, and Yuan Jixin were quickly approaching. All of us have entered the stone room. We're so lucky. Yuan Xiaoman smiled excitedly. She was the last to enter the stone room. Previously, when she saw her boss and the rest enter the stone room one after another, she became more and more nervous, afraid that she would not be able to enter. After all, since they were already a team, no one wanted to be left behind. Fortunately, even though she was extremely nervous, she still managed to open the door of the stone room. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head, and a bright smile appeared on her exquisite and beautiful face. Just as Yuan Xiaoman said, their team had managed to enter the stone room, which was a very hard thing to believe for the other teams. Since everyone is here, let's set off. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite jade-like face exuded a sense of heroism. Her phoenix-like eyes flickered with seriousness. They had already spent quite a bit of time in this stone chamber. Compared to some of the other cultivators, they had fallen far behind. If they did not speed up, they might not be able to obtain any of the treasures behind them. Just the stone chamber at the very front contained such precious treasures. From this, one could imagine how precious the treasures in the main hall of the ruins were. It would be a huge regret if he missed out on all these treasures. Chapter 1392. Bailey Hongzhuang's group slowly walked into the forest. As they walked, everyone was paying attention to the movements around them. However, they did not encounter any problems along the way. Originally, they were worried that there would be monster beasts, but they did not even hear the roar of a monster beast, which was really strange. After walking for a while, everyone had quietly relaxed a bit. Could it be that this forest is just an ordinary forest? We have been walking for so long, and nothing has appeared. Xia Jiqing's pretty face was full of doubts. This situation was really confusing. The master of the monument should not be so bored as to make such a small world, right? Yuan Xiaoman also showed a helpless expression. The scope of this forest was not small. They had walked for a long time, but they still could not see the end. The most important thing was that until now, she did not know the intention of the master of the monument to arrange such a forest. Don't worry, I believe that the master of the monument must have his own arrangements. Mo Yunjue's voice slowly sounded. Compared to everyone's irritation and incomprehension, Mo Yunjue's face was only indifferent and calm. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to walk forward without saying a word. It was absolutely impossible for such a large forest to have no purpose. Suddenly, a series of footprints appeared in everyone's line of sight. These are the footprints of cultivators. Dongfang Yu immediately said after looking at the large series of footprints. Looking at this series of footprints, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found that this series of footprints was complex and dense. Obviously, there were many cultivators who had passed by. However, the origin of the footprints was not in the same direction as them. Eventually, it gathered with them, forming a three-way road. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two completely different directions that finally converged at one point, and her mind quickly thought, maybe it's the road on the right. Mo Yunjue's voice was low and full of charm, revealing a deep seriousness. Listening to Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, and then nodded. It's very likely. With so many footprints, it was obvious that a large group of cultivators had passed by. Thinking about it, there should still be quite a number of cultivators who had taken the left path like them, who had stopped in front of the stone room. The footsteps shouldn't be so dense. Therefore, Mo Yunjue's judgment was most likely correct. We have to pick up the pace. Many cultivators are already ahead of us. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was dignified, and she immediately increased her speed. They couldn't be too much slower than the other cultivators. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words falling, Xia Jiqing and the others all increased their speed and quickly followed. It was rare to have such a good opportunity. They couldn't just watch the treasure be taken away by other cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quickly followed the footprints. Just from the footprints, they could tell that there was no danger ahead, so they could increase their speed without hesitation. After rushing for a while, suddenly, a loud noise came into the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty are really powerful. They actually defeated the Nine Suns' heavenly crocodile. This is not entirely the credit of the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty. The cultivators of the Wanyan dynasty have already seriously injured the Nine Suns' heavenly crocodile. It is because of this that the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty had the opportunity to kill it. Chapter 1393. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived, they saw a group of cultivators gathered in a circle in front of them. All the cultivators were gathered together. It was obvious that something had happened in the center. The Nine Suns Heaven Crocodile. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang approached, this keyword was already passed into her ears. The Nine Suns Heaven Crocodile was an extremely powerful demonic beast. Its cultivation level was equivalent to a cultivator at the peak of the Orange Realm. Once they encountered it, it would be extremely troublesome. She did not expect to see it in the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest quickly approached, and a herb field appeared in their line of sight. It was a huge herb field. It was so big that it was no different from a mountain peak. However, the herbs in the herb field had almost all withered. Only the withered seedlings were left. It was obvious that no one had taken care of it for many years, and it had died long ago. Bailey Hongzhuang scanned the area, and her gaze landed on a stalk of immortal spiritual herb in the middle of the crowd. The immortal spiritual herb had the effect of saving lives. It was known as a life-saving immortal spiritual herb. The conditions for its growth were not harsh. However, it was extremely rare and could be said to be rare. Many cultivators would be able to save their lives with the help of this immortal spirit grass when they were severely injured. Therefore, this immortal spiritual herb could be said to be a sacred healing medicine. Almost all cultivators had an indescribable desire for the immortal spiritual herb. This was because as long as they had the immortal spiritual herb, it meant that they had a second life. However, this immortal spiritual herb was extremely rare and could not be seen on a normal day. Who would have thought that there would be a stalk of immortal spiritual herb in the ruins? It was really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up the moment she saw the immortal spiritual herb. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the withered condition of the herbs in the herb field and immediately understood. Logically speaking, even if these herbs had not been taken care of for many years, they would not have all died except for one stalk of immortal spiritual herb. As everyone knew, this immortal spiritual herb was extremely domineering. As long as there was an immortal forest, the energy of the surrounding plants would be absorbed by it. Therefore, there were no other plants around the survival spot of the immortal spiritual herb. It was the only stalk of immortal spiritual herb. After pondering for a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but have a guess in her mind. Perhaps the owner of the ruins planted so many medicinal herbs just so that the immortal herbs could survive better. Obviously, there were so many herbs here, but the most precious one was undoubtedly the immortal spiritual grass. This stalk of immortal herbs was much fatter than the ones Bailey Hongzhuang had seen before, and its medicinal properties were also much better. At the same time, the discussions of the surrounding cultivators also reached Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They had already understood the origin of all this. It turned out that there was a guardian beast outside the herb field. It was the Nine Suns Heavenly Execution Crocodile. Only by defeating this Nine Suns Heaven Execution Crocodile would one be able to unlock the restrictions of the herb field and successfully enter it. Previously, all the cultivators had been stopped by the Nine Suns Heavenly Execution Crocodile until the cultivators from the Qinrun Dynasty and the Myriad Cloud Dynasty appeared. The Qinrun Dynasty and the Myriad Cloud Dynasty were both large dynasty teams. Their strength had always been strong and far surpassed the average cultivator. Under the attacks of the cultivators from the Qinrun Dynasty and the Myriad Cloud Dynasty, the Nine Suns Heavenly Execution Crocodile fell. However, there was a huge dispute over who would obtain the immortal spiritual herb in the end. Pan Zimo, this Nine Suns Heavenly Execution Crocodile, died in my hands, so this immortal spiritual herb is naturally mine. Chapter 1394. Pan Zimo's expression was gloomy and ugly. Dong Hongyun, the cultivators in my team worked hard to severely injure the Nine Suns Heavenly Killing Crocodile. It was only a matter of time before we killed it. You only put in some effort at the back. It's impossible for you to snatch the immortal spirit herb with just that. Pan Zimo was not the only one. All the cultivators in the Myriad Cloud dynasty were filled with anger. They had spent a Herculean effort to severely injure the Nine Suns' heavenly killing crocodile. In the process, their team had also paid a heavy price. However, someone had appeared out of nowhere and wanted to snatch the immortal spirit herb with just a little effort. What was the difference between that and robbery? Most importantly, the Nine Suns' heavenly killing crocodile was extremely powerful. Their team had also suffered heavy injuries in the process of fighting the Nine Suns' heavenly killing crocodile. Under such circumstances, they were no match for the cultivators from the Qinrun dynasty. However, they were also unwilling to give the immortal spirit herb to the cultivators from the Qinrun dynasty. Dong Hongyan chuckled. Pan Zimo, the treasures in this ruin belong to whoever obtains them. If you're not convinced, our two teams can compete. However, before that, you have to consider the situation of your team. The immortal spirit herb is naturally a treasure. However, if your entire team falls here for one immortal spirit herb, it's not a good deal. As Dong Hongyun's voice fell, the cultivators from the Qinrun dynasty burst into laughter. They had seen the cultivators from the Myriad Cloud dynasty dealing with the Nine Suns' heavenly killing crocodile. That was why they had not made a move. It was only when the cultivators from the Myriad Cloud dynasty were about to finish off the Nine Suns' heavenly killing crocodile that they stepped forward to complete the final blow. After all, the most important thing in this ruin was to preserve one's strength. Since there was someone helping them to solve some obstacles for free, they were naturally more than happy to do so. The cultivators from the Myriad Cloud dynasty had extremely ugly expressions. The cultivators from the Qinrun dynasty had grasped this point, which was why they were so unscrupulous. Dong Hongyun, you're too despicable. Pan Zimo's face was gloomy. His stern voice was filled with anger as it came from his mouth. However, Dong Hongyun shrugged nonchalantly. His smile was filled with shamelessness and cunning. Pan Zimo, what you said is wrong. The cultivators from the Qinrun dynasty have always emphasized fairness. If you don't agree to compete, isn't this the rule of the Shangxian continent? Pan Zimo gritted his teeth as he looked at Dong Hongyun. Unfortunately, everything was under Dong Hongyun's control. Even if he wanted to change the situation, he had no chance. However, if they allowed the Qinrun dynasty cultivators to take away the immortal spiritual herb, what would happen to the Myriad Cloud dynasty's dignity? The morale of the brothers would also take a huge hit. The cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire are really unlucky. They spent so much effort only to end up helping the Qinrun Empire. I'm afraid they're going to die from anger. Who asked the cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire to be injured. Their strength can't be compared to the Qinrun Empire at all. Chapter 1395. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others felt a little helpless. The cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty were indeed shameless, but in the current situation, the team of the Thousand Cloud dynasty was really at a disadvantage. The cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty are really shameless. The cultivators of the Thousand Cloud dynasty are really unlucky. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but sigh after seeing this scene. Although she was also very envious of the immortal spirit grass. In the current situation, she only felt that the faces of the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty were very annoying. The immortal spirit grass is a rare treasure, but the Qinrun dynasty and the Thousand Cloud dynasty are both large dynasty teams. I'm afraid that we won't have a chance to get the myriad spirit grass. Yuan Xiaoman frowned. Such a precious treasure was something that every cultivator wanted to get, but they were not strong enough and could only watch. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were silent. If the strength of the opponents was not too different, they still had a chance to fight, but when the difference in strength was too big, it was not worthwhile to fight like this. And Mo Yunjue's eyes also fell on the cultivators of the Thousand Cloud dynasty, but compared to the crowd, the Mo Yunjue's eyes were different. When the eyes of the cultivators fell on the two dynasty teams that were arguing, Bailey Hongzhuang had already looked in another direction. After seeing the cyan figure, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly froze and became motionless. Han Shilling fell into an extremely bad state when she learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen. When she learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had not fallen and that the so-called scream was just to deceive everyone. Although she was very dissatisfied, there was a trace of relief in her heart. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was not dead, she still had a chance to heal her throat in the small world. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was not dead, she still had a chance to catch Bailey Hongzhuang and torture her. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang, she had been a mute for so long. It was a humiliation that could not be erased in her life. Even if he encountered cultivators he was familiar with, he did not dare to show himself because he did not want to show such a terrible scene in front of other cultivators. Ever since she entered the ruins, she had been searching for treasures while looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the many treasures in the ruins, she hoped that she could find Bailey Hongzhuang as soon as possible and cure her throat. However, after entering the historical remains, she had not been able to find Bailey Hongzhuang. This made her extremely dissatisfied. She never thought that at this moment, she would finally meet Bailey Hongzhuang, the woman who she wished she could cut into 1,000 pieces. Miss Han, that's Bailey Hongzhuang. Wu Yuexin also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang, and his eyes were immediately filled with excitement. After searching for such a long time, they had finally found this hateful woman. Han Shiling's eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang, and he did not bother to hide the venomous and vicious light in his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling's eyes met in midair, and countless sparks flew as they collided. The grudge between them has been accumulated for a long time, and now was the time to resolve it. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to walk towards Han Shilling, Mo Yunjue suddenly grabbed her hand. Her wrist was suddenly pulled, and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. She turned to look at Mo Yunjue, and there was a deep doubt in her eyes. Chapter 1396. As soon as the words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang's dark and cold eyes were filled with an imperceptible light. You have a way? The charm of the immortal spiritual herb was something that almost no cultivator could resist. The existence of a second life was an incomparably precious treasure. However, in this short period of time, she had already seen the situation in front of her clearly. There were many empires near the immortal spiritual herb, but the most powerful ones were from the Qinrun Empire and the Wanyan Empire. If not, the other cultivators would have already fought to be the first to obtain such a treasure. Why would they be standing obediently at the side now? There were also many large empires teams present. In comparison, their team had no hope at all. Mo Yunjue's smile widened. I have a way. What way? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, but quietly retracted her hand that Mo Yunjue was holding. Her pretty face was filled with seriousness and curiosity. Heavenly treasures were irresistible to any cultivator, and it was naturally the same for her. If there was a chance, she would definitely not let it go. Watch me. Mo Yunjue smiled mysteriously, then slowly walked towards the crowd. Han Shilling's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. When she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was about to walk towards her, she was already prepared to fight. However, the scene of Mo Yunjue grabbing Bailey Hongzhuang's wrist was also clearly seen by her. Her sinister and fierce gaze suddenly changed. Although she had seen Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang together, she did not think much of it. Although Mo Yunjue's appearance was not ordinary and his temperament was extraordinary, he was at most a cultivator from an empire. Regardless of whether it was his status or identity, he was far from being comparable to Brother D. She believed that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely aware of this. However, based on the scene just now, could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was really related to this man? At the thought of this, Han Shilling could not help but feel excited. In this way, what right did Bailey Hongzhuang have to compete with her for Brother D? She wanted to let everyone know of Bailey Hongzhuang's shameless actions. Mo Yunjue slowly walked towards the center of the crowd, his handsome face filled with a bright and elegant smile. Master Pan, long time no see. Pan Zimo immediately turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. When he saw Mo Yunjue, his face couldn't help but be filled with surprise. Master, Mo? Pan Zimo could not hide the shock in his eyes. He even suspected that he had seen wrongly. However, after taking a closer look, he was sure that the person in front of him was indeed Mo Yunjue. However, with Mo Yunjue's status, why would he participate in the assessment competition? Mo Yunjue slowly walked to Pan Zimo's side and said, "Young Master Pan, it seems that you need help." Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Pan Zimo was slightly stunned. He then smiled and nodded. The Myriad Cloud Empire and the Qin-run Empire had always been rivals. Under these circumstances, the immortal spiritual herb was not that important. To him, even if the immortal spiritual herb fell into the hands of others, it would be far better than if it fell into the hands of Dong Hongyun and the others. As long as Mo Yunjue agreed to join their team, they would be able to join forces and defeat the Qin-run Empire's team. This way, although they did not have the immortal spiritual herb, their reputation would surpass the Qin-run Empire's. Chapter 1397. Pan Zimo had dealt with Mo Yunjue before, so he was very familiar with Mo Yunjue's style of doing things. However, under such circumstances, this was not a bad thing. On the contrary, even if they lost the immortal spiritual herb, they could still retain their dignity. When the cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire saw that someone had come to help, their originally ugly expressions eased a little. At least they would not be humiliated by the cultivators of the Qin-run Empire. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw that Mo Yunjue knew the cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire, they could not help but look surprised. Young Master Mo really knows a lot of people. He even knows the cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire. Yuan Xiaoman's eyes shone with surprise. The Myriad Cloud Empire was a truly large empire. It was very far away, and she had only heard of it. Isn't young Master Mo from the Green Firmament Empire? Bai Junyu frowned. The distance between the Green Firmament Empire and the Myriad Cloud Empire is not ordinary. These two places, one in the east and one in the west, were extremely far away. It was hard to imagine that Mo Yunjue of the Green Firmament Empire would know the cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Mo Yunjue's back, her eyes filled with confusion. She really did not understand Mo Yunjue's identity. However, with Mo Yunjue's vast knowledge, it was not strange that he had been to many places. Just like her, she had been in Fengbo country and had met Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jixin of the Snow Origin Empire. It was all fate. After seeing Mo Yunjue suddenly appear, Dong Hongyun's face could not help but change a bit. The immortal spiritual herb was already in their bag. They did not expect Mo Yunjue to suddenly appear. Could it be that something unexpected had happened? The cultivators of the Myriad Cloud Empire were on par with them in strength. Now that they were injured, their strength naturally could not be compared to theirs. However, with the appearance of an unfamiliar cultivator, their combat strength had to be reevaluated. "Sir, this is a matter between our Qin-run dynasty and the Myriad Cloud dynasty. I hope you won't get involved." Mo Yunjue looked at Dong Hongyun indifferently. "What if I say that I want to interfere?" Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Dong Hongyun's face immediately darkened. His gaze towards Mo Yunjue was filled with displeasure and threat. "Are you sure you want to go against my Qin-run dynasty? I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences." However, in the face of Dong Hongyun's threat, Mo Yunjue remained unmoved. "You don't have to worry about that." All the spectating cultivators were dumbfounded when they saw Mo Yunjue suddenly barge into the situation. This fellow actually dared to rashly meddle in other people's business when two large empires' teams were clashing. He was really seeking his own death. Who is this black-clothed man? Why haven't I seen him before? The teams of the Qin-run dynasty and the Myriad Cloud Empire are extremely powerful. At this time, no one dares to interfere. This fellow actually dares to bump into the muzzle of the gun. He is really bold. This black-clothed man seems to be a cultivator from the Qianfeng dynasty. I saw him in the Qianfeng dynasty's team before. Qianfeng dynasty. When the crowd knew that Mo Yunjue was from the Qianfeng dynasty's team, their disdain and ridicule immediately disappeared. Chapter 1398. After knowing that Mo Yunjue was a cultivator from the Qianfeng dynasty, Dong Hongyun's expression changed. The cultivators from the Qianfeng dynasty were extremely powerful, and he had heard that the team from the Qianfeng dynasty was one of the strongest. However, he had never met a cultivator from the Qianfeng dynasty since the start of the assessment. Originally, this matter was set in stone. Once the cultivators from the Qianfeng dynasty interfered, coupled with the strength of the cultivators from the Wanyan dynasty, they would have no chance of winning. Young Master Mo, there is no enmity between us. Why do you have to interfere? Dong Hongyun put away the disdainful expression from before, and his posture also lowered a bit. This immortal spiritual herb was so close to being his, he didn't want to let it slip away from his hands just like that. Mo Yunjue glanced at Dong Hongyun and laughed maniacally. If you give the immortal spirit herb to me, I will not interfere. How about it? Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Dong Hongyun's expression instantly turned ugly, and he looked at Mo Yunjue with dissatisfaction. If he had not taken a fancy to the immortal spirit herb, he would not have needed to confront the cultivators from the Wanyan dynasty. Mo Yunjue had obviously taken a fancy to the confrontation between the two teams and wanted to extort them. However, in this situation, Mo Yunjue's words carried a certain amount of weight. If he did not agree, then the Qianfeng dynasty's team and the Wanyan dynasty's team would join forces. There would only be one outcome for his team: defeat. If he agreed, then there was no need for this competition to exist. Suddenly, Dong Hongyun looked at Pan Zimo and said, "Pan Zimo, are you going to give up the immortal spirit herb?" Dong Hongyun's eyes narrowed and flashed with a sinister light. He did not believe that Pan Zimo would give up the immortal spirit herb so easily. Mo Yunjue's attitude was already very obvious. They were all people who wouldn't get up early if there were no benefits. Even if Mo Yunjue helped to defeat them, Pan Zimo would not be able to get the immortal spirit herb. He believed that Pan Zimo would not be willing to give it up. Facing Dong Hongyun's confident gaze, Pan Zimo's gaze became even colder and more resolute. Compared to a despicable person like you, I would rather give the immortal spiritual herb to Mr. Mo. Pan Zimo answered without hesitation. He had already thought of the answer the moment Mo Yunjue appeared. When the cultivators from the Myriad Cloud Empire heard Pan Zimo's decision, a look of surprise appeared in their eyes. However, after thinking about it carefully, the doubts and unwillingness in the hearts of the cultivators from the Myriad Cloud Empire gradually disappeared. Compared to the Qinrun dynasty's cultivators taking it away, giving it to Mo Yunjue was a better way to preserve their dignity. Not only were they representing themselves, but they were also representing the Myriad Cloud dynasty. No matter what, they could not lose to Dong Hongyun. After hearing Pan Zimo's answer, Dong Hongyun could not help but be stunned. He looked at Pan Zimo in disbelief, wondering if he had heard wrongly. However, Pan Zimo's determined expression clearly told him that it was true. In an instant, the Qinrun dynasty's cultivators' faces turned ugly. This awkward situation seemed to have shifted from the Myriad Cloud dynasty's cultivators to them. If they left with their tails between their legs, they would lose all their dignity. Chapter 1399. After seeing the strategy used by Mo Yunjue, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a touch of appreciation. Mo Yunjue was directly targeting the weaknesses of the two teams. As a result, the immortal spirit grass that originally had nothing to do with them was really likely to be in their pocket. Dong Hongyun, we're here to help you. At this time, a female voice came from the crowd. The onlookers' faces were once again filled with surprise. Originally, this matter was full of twists and turns. They didn't expect that now another group of people would appear. This was really getting more and more exciting. Speaking of which, only after defeating the 9 Suns' heavenly killing crocodile could the restriction of the medicine field be removed. As long as the immortal spirit grass was not picked, the restriction in front would still not dissipate. Therefore, they could only wait here and watch the development of the situation. After hearing this familiar voice, Xia Jiqing and the others immediately looked in the direction of the source of the voice. After seeing a group of familiar figures, a strong sense of disgust filled the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others. The person who spoke was none other than Wu Yuexin. Han Shiling's group really came. Dong Fengyu frowned. They had been looking for Han Shiling and the others before, but they hadn't seen any trace of them. They didn't expect that they would appear in front of them at this time. They had been looking for so long. This time, it could really be said that new hatred and old hatred were settled together. It seems that since Han Shiling became a mute, this Wu Yuexin has become very proud. Xia Jiqing looked at Wu Yuexin with displeasure. Long ago, she found Wu Yuexin very unpleasant to the eye. With her strength, she thought that she was the first place. It was ridiculous. The most hateful thing was that Wu Yuexin looked down on their background. Thinking of Wu Yuexin's arrogant and complacent appearance, she wanted to send this woman directly to hell. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. It seems that today we have to deal with them together. Gong Shaoqing's voice was cold, and there was no warmth in his eyes as he looked at Wu Yuexin and the others. Seeing this, Yuan Zhixin and Yuan Xiaoman looked at each other. Although they didn't know what kind of grievances there were between the boss and Han Shiling in these days of getting along, they also knew that this contradiction was irreconcilable. Since they were mortal enemies, they didn't need to understand the reason behind it. They only needed to know that they were opponents. Dong Hongyun's eyes lit up when he heard that there were cultivators helping. However, when he turned around and saw that there were only 8 of them, his face turned ugly. A team from a mid-sized empire would not be of much use in such a battle. Their opponents were teams from 2 large empires. Which dynasty did this team come from? Why haven't I seen it before? It doesn't matter which dynasty it comes from, it's just a mid-sized dynasty. A team from a medium empire is actually going to get involved in the conflict between the teams from 3 large empires. Isn't this courting death? Looking at Dong Hongyun's appearance, he doesn't seem to know the cultivators in this team. In my opinion, they're crazy about the immortal spirit grass. They want to get the immortal spirit grass with their strength. Isn't this courting death? With the appearance of Wu Yuexin and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also slowly moved forward and appeared in everyone's sight. Chapter 1400. Bailey Hongzhuang, I haven't seen you for a while, but your seductive skills are getting better and better. Wu Yuexin looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang, especially when she looked at Mo Yunjue. Her eyes were particularly complicated. She didn't understand what was so good about Bailey Hongzhuang. She was obviously a married woman, but now she dared to flirt outside. This man in black was so elegant and had an extraordinary temperament. Bailey Hongzhuang was not worthy of him at all. As Wu Yuexin's voice fell, the eyes of the cultivators fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman in white gave people a feeling of impeccable whether it was her appearance or temperament. However, the seductive appearance that Wu Yuexin spoke of was obviously not related to the appearance of the woman in front of them. This was because the temperament of this woman in white was extremely cold. There was a trace of coldness in her arrogance, and a trace of gentleness in her nobility. No matter from which point of view, she was not seductive at all. Wu Yuexin, do you believe that I will tear your mouth apart if you continue to talk nonsense? Seeing that Wu Yuexin dared to talk about Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Xia Jiqing was the first one who couldn't help but stand up. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Wu Yuexin's face was ugly. Xia Jiqing, you are really a good dog raised by Bailey Hongzhuang. The owner hasn't said anything yet, and you have already started to bite people. As soon as these words came out, without waiting for Xia Jiqing to speak, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice had already sounded first. If you have the guts, say it again. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were like a knife, and a terrifying aura broke out in an instant. The amazing murderous aura, with endless coldness, shot directly at Wu Yuexin. She had always regarded Xia Jiqing as her good sister, but Wu Yuexin dared to insult Xia Jiqing. She would never allow it. Wu Yuexin stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's pair of sharp and murderous eyes. Her mind couldn't help but tremble. A chill rose from her back, and an indescribable feeling of fear spread rapidly in her heart. For a while, Wu Yuexin didn't know what to say. Wu Yuexin kept opening her mouth. She had never seen such an imposing aura from Bailey Hongzhuang. It was as if she was going to cut her into pieces. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. It seemed that the strength of this woman in white was not weak. Otherwise, she wouldn't have scared Wu Yuexin so badly that he couldn't say anything else with just one sentence. Jiqing is words, and Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold and powerful. Her delicate and beautiful face flashed with a cold and glittering brilliance. The murderous aura she revealed stunned many cultivators present. Such a strong murderous aura was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could emit. Just this point alone was enough to attract the attention of many cultivators. As everyone knew, the murderous aura released by a strong cultivator was not necessarily strong. Only cultivators who were stained with blood would have a murderous aura. The crueler the environment, the more bloody it was, the stronger the murderous aura would be. Bailey Hongzhuang's murderous aura was simply amazing. A woman in her teens had such a strong murderous aura. It was hard for everyone to imagine what kind of environment Bailey Hongzhuang came from. When everyone was puzzled, only Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman understood a little. Chapter 1401. Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang emotionally. She rarely saw Bailey Hongzhuang so angry. Even when Wu Yuexin slandered her, Bailey Hongzhuang was still calm. However, when Wu Yuexin insulted her like this, Bailey Hongzhuang was angry. This point alone was enough to prove that Bailey Hongzhuang really treated her as a good sister. Thinking of this, Xia Jiqing felt a burst of warmth in her heart. In fact, in her heart, her biggest gain from cultivating at the Kanglin College was knowing Hongzhuang. If there was no Hongzhuang, she was afraid that she would not have been able to go all the way until now. Because of Hongzhuang's excellence, she urged her to work hard and move forward. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were tightly locked on Wu Yuexin. If she did not have much feelings for Wu Yuexin before, now Wu Yuexin would definitely die. She would make Wu Yuexin pay a heavy price. Mo Yunjue's eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. He already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating in the Bloodground Abyss. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang also obtained the inheritance of the Bloodground Abyss. Now it seemed that the Bloodground Abyss had made Bailey Hongzhuang change a lot and become more ruthless. However, as a cultivator, this was an extremely good change. Pan Zimo looked at Mo Yunjue in surprise. With Mo Yunjue's identity, he should have appeared in the team of a large dynasty. At this moment, it seemed that Mo Yunjue was in a medium-sized team. Young Master Mo, which dynasty are you from? Pan Zimo couldn't help but ask. For him, in this battle with the Qinrun dynasty, they must win. There was no room for jokes. Tiangang dynasty. Mo Yunjue chuckled. After knowing that Mo Yunjue was from the Tiangang dynasty and not the Qianfeng dynasty, Pan Zimo's expression changed again and again. If Mo Yunjue was only from a medium-sized dynasty, then it was unknown whether they could win this battle. Although Pan Zimo and Mo Yunjue's conversation was low, Dong Hongyun on the opposite side could still hear it clearly and couldn't help but laugh. It turns out that this young Master Mo is also from a medium-sized dynasty. I thought you were a great character. You actually dare to shout at a cultivator from the Qinrun dynasty. I think you are looking for death. Dong's face was gloomy as Water's worse eyes was full of threats. Originally, he thought that Mo Yunjue came from the Qianfeng dynasty, which made him worried. It turned out that all of this was fake. How ridiculous! In the face of Dong Hongyun's threat, Mo Yunjue remained unmoved. So what if it's a medium-sized empire? You will still be defeated by us. Ha! Dong Hongyun chuckled and turned to look at Pan Zimo. Pan Zimo, it seems that your reinforcements aren't that strong. I originally planned to let you guys go as long as you obediently hand over the immortal spiritual herb. Since you guys are so stubborn, then I can only give you a hard slap in the face. Dong Hongyun smiled proudly. The strength of the two medium-sized dynasties wasn't too different, and they could completely take care of the cultivators from the Myriad Cloud dynasty. They were definitely going to win this battle. Pan Zimo's expression was very ugly. He couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue and said, "Young Master Mo, are you really confident?" Their situation was different from the Tiangang dynasty. Even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty failed this time, it wouldn't affect them much. Chapter 1402. Mo Yunjue's long eyebrows were slanted, his demeanor was relaxed, and his slightly raised lips revealed a trace of confidence. "Young Master Pan, you don't believe me?" Listening to Mo Yunjue's words, Pan Zimo couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember the identity of Mo Yunjue and immediately shook his head. "No, that's good." Mo Yunjue smiled and turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. "It seems that this battle is inevitable." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Since we have to fight sooner or later, let's settle it once and for all." She would never let Han Xiling leave the assessment alive. Since they met today, she would settle it once and for all. Han Xiling looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She wanted to speak, but her throat couldn't make any sound. It was really uncomfortable. The next moment, Han Xiling glanced at Wu Yuexin. However, Wu Yuexin didn't dare to speak again. Just now, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was too terrifying. It was like a nightmare. She didn't dare to speak again. Han Xiling looked at Wu Yuexin angrily. How arrogant was Wu Yuexin usually? Now that she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was so cowardly. If this fell into the eyes of other cultivators, wouldn't it mean that they were afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang? She absolutely couldn't let everyone think so. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Xiling's squeaky appearance, and her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Han Xiling, how does it feel to be a mute?" Hearing this, Han Xiling's gaze immediately fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. His eyes were full of anger, but he couldn't say a word. Xia Jiqing saw Han Xiling's appearance, and there was a touch of novelty in her eyes. "Boss, since you turned Han Xiling into a mute, I feel that my ears are a lot quieter." If it was a normal day, Han Xiling would have already been unable to hold back the urge to curse. Now looking at Han Xiling's face full of resentment, but he couldn't make a sound, she only felt very happy. This guy was born to be a mute. Compared to his previous arrogant appearance, he looks much more pleasing to the eye now. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of sarcasm. Just by looking at Han Xiling's eyes, she knew that she hadn't been taught a lesson. Last time, she only turned him into a mute, but this time it wasn't so simple. With the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang falling, Han Xiling was even more furious. Bailey Hongzhuang dared to say such things to her. She was so angry that she kept opening her mouth, but she couldn't make sound. After seeing this scene, everyone also understood that the reason why Han Xiling became a mute was caused by Bailey Hongzhuang. Suddenly, everyone's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but change a bit. They didn't expect such a beautiful woman to have such ability. Han Xiling's appearance was also outstanding. Therefore, this competition between the beauties was very popular. Looking at this, it was obvious that they had been holding grudges for a long time. "Bailey Hongzhuang, don't be too arrogant. You will soon die in our hands." At this time, a man standing behind Han Xiling made a sound. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the man. She also had some impression of this man. Xin Yangbing's performance in the assessment at that time was also very outstanding, second only to Wu Yuexin. However, she didn't communicate with him before. She didn't expect Xin Yangbing to stand up now. Chapter 1403. In the face of Xin Yangbing's threatening words, Bailey Hongzhuang still had the appearance of a cloud, indifferent and wanton. If the cultivators of the two teams fought before, they still needed to fight hard. However, after this period of cultivation, the gap between the strength of the two teams was gradually narrowing. As long as they fought, Han Xiling and the others could no longer maintain their current complacency. Xia Jiqing and the others were also rubbing their hands at the moment. They had been cultivating hard during this time and had never slacked off at all. It was all for today's confrontation with Han Xiling and the others. When they were in Tiangang's sect, because their strength was not strong enough, they had been suffering from everyone's ridicule. Now, after such a long time of hard work, they believed that this time when they fought again, they would no longer be the side that was completely suppressed. Dong Hongyun had already understood after seeing the grievances between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and Han Xiling's team. It seemed that Han Xiling's team saw the existence of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and deliberately came to find trouble. Pan Zimo, under such circumstances, are you sure you still want to go against us? Dong Hongyun looked at Pan Zimo. Although he had no interest in the grievances between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling, he had to admit that the appearance of Han Xiling had reduced their team's trouble. However, since the strength of the two medium-sized empire teams was equally matched, there was no need for him to join in. As long as the cultivators of the Thousand Cloud Empire agreed to give up, they could save some effort and get more treasures in the ruins. Listening to Dong Hongyun's words, Pan Zimo also had some hesitation. He originally thought that Mo Yunjue's team was a team from a large empire. He did not expect it to be a team from a small empire. The most important thing was that the Qinrun Empire also had a team from a medium-sized empire as a helper. As a result, their Thousand Cloud Empire was also at a disadvantage. If they were still the ones who lost after this battle, then it would really be a disgrace. When Mo Yunjue saw Pan Zimo's conflicted expression, his voice slowly rang out. Young Master Pan, since you want to fight, then don't hesitate. As Mo Yunjue finished speaking, Pan Zimo could not help but be stunned for a moment before he nodded. Okay. He had almost forgotten that with Mo Yunjue's background, killing him was a simple matter. Evidently, Mo Yunjue wanted to obtain this immortal spirit herb. If he tried to stop them, he would be courting death. Therefore, he had no other choice at the moment. Seeing that Pan Zimo was still insistent, with a look of fear towards Mo Yunjue, Dong Hongyun was puzzled. Mo Yunjue was just a cultivator from a mid-tier dynasty. With Pan Zimo's status, there was no reason for him to be afraid. Dong Hongyun couldn't figure out the reason behind this at all. However, since there was no turning back, he did not mind teaching the cultivators of the Thousand Cloud Empire a lesson. It would be best if he could use this opportunity to severely injure the team from the Thousand Cloud Empire. Then, when they returned to the Qinrun Empire, the Emperor would definitely reward them greatly. Chapter 1404. Pan Zimo, I originally wanted to give you a chance. Since you're so stubborn, I can only teach you a lesson. Dong Hongyun looked at Pan Zimo and the others with disdain. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Pan Zimo. At the same time, the cultivators behind Dong Hongyun took out their weapons and a cold light flashed in their eyes. Dong Hongyun turned to look at Han Xiling and the others and said, Friends, I'll leave the cultivators from Tiangang Dynasty to you. Hearing that, Wu Yuexi nodded slightly and said, Don't worry, leave it to us. Seeing that Dong Hongyun and the others had set up their formation, the cultivators from Myriad Cloud Empire could not hide their worry. They did not understand what was wrong with their leader. Logically speaking, there was no benefit for them to join the battle team. Even so, their leaders still chose to fight. This was too strange. However, at this time, they could not question their leader's actions. It was really frustrating. Pan Zimo's heart was also filled with helplessness. However, at this time, he could only pin his hopes on Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue patted Pan Zimo's shoulder and gave him a reassuring look. Seeing that, Pan Zimo felt more at ease. Dong Hongyun, let's see who will emerge victorious. Pan Zimo's voice was cold. Since Dong Hongyun appeared, he had been looking for trouble with him. He had been feeling aggrieved for a long time. Now that he had decided to fight, his breathing became smoother. Seeing Pan Zimo's confident look, the mockery in Dong Hongyun's eyes deepened. In his opinion, Pan Zimo was completely blinded by anger. Now, with just a few cultivators from a middle-sized empire, he wanted to turn the tables. It was simply a fantasy. Pan Zimo, don't you kneel down and kowtow to me later and beg for mercy. Dong Hongyun revealed a sinister smile. Because I won't let you go. Pan Zimo's face turned cold. Dong Hongyun, if you fall into my hands, I'll let you know how it feels to be humiliated. While the cultivators from Qinrun Dynasty and Wanyan Dynasty were fighting, the conflict between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling's team was escalating. Bailey Hongzhuang, you've only participated in the competition for a few months, and now you've hooked up with another man. You're really shameless. After Wu Yuexin was frightened by Bailey Hongzhuang, he recovered after Han Shiling's advice. It was just a look, and Bailey Hongzhuang was not that strong. She was actually afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang because of this. Wu Yuexin felt extremely embarrassed when he thought about his performance just now. Hence, his voice was exceptionally loud at this moment. It was as if this was the only way she could regain the dignity she had just lost. You should know that you're a married woman. I'd like to see how you're going to face others if you don't abide by the rules. Wu Yuexin's words became more and more sarcastic. She could not help but look at Mo Yunjue, wanting to know Mo Yunjue's attitude. In fact, she was attracted to Mo Yunjue from the first time she saw him. His tall and burly figure, his extraordinary noble temperament, and his handsome appearance were enough to make any woman's heart beat faster. Chapter 1405. She only hoped that through her words, she could attract Mo Yunjue's attention. She believed that Mo Yunjue absolutely did not know that Bailey Hongzhuang was married. Once Mo Yunjue knew, he would never continue to be with Bailey Hongzhuang. She wanted everyone to know that Bailey Hongzhuang was a foxy woman. Han Shiling's eyes showed a deep smile. What Wu Yuexin said at the moment was exactly what she wanted to say. Bailey Hongzhuang had made her suffer so much. She would never let Bailey Hongzhuang be happy. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she wanted everyone to know what kind of person Bailey Hongzhuang was. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang's face was ruined, she believed that Digo would not accept Bailey Hongzhuang. Digo would only be hers. Listening to Wu Yuexin's words, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. She did not expect Wu Yuexin's words to be so vicious. Sure enough, as Wu Yuexin's voice fell, the surrounding cultivators' gazes towards Bailey Hongzhuang changed. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a beautiful appearance, but her life is so messy. It's really surprising. I've already said that such a beautiful woman is born foxy, but you men don't believe it. You really can't judge a book by its cover. I didn't expect her to be a married woman. In the Shangxian continent, many cultivators were extremely conservative. A man could have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but a woman must be loyal. For some women whose lives were extremely messy, most cultivators could not accept it. Therefore, after knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang's life was so messy, everyone had a sense of disgust towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Wu Yuexin, you're not going to say anything? Don't pour dirty water on my boss. Xia Jiqing was the first to speak up. Rumors had always been extremely terrible. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and it would not be long before this news spread to everyone. Once it was confirmed, it would be a shame that could not be washed away for a lifetime. In fact, No one would care about the authenticity of this. Boss would be the wife of the young lord of Tiangang's sect in the future. If such a rumor spread, it would be extremely unfavorable to Boss. Wu Yuexin chuckled. How am I pouring dirty water? What I said is the truth. An unknown woman could actually become the wife of the young master of the Tiangang sect. This point alone was enough to make everyone speculate a lot. Dong Hongyun and Pan's eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. According to their thoughts, they thought Bailey Hongzhuang should be a woman. They did not think that under such a pure appearance was such a woman's under such a pure appearance. Was a woman. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wu Yuexin coldly. A woman's mouth was so vicious. She could understand Wu Yuexin's vicious intentions. She wanted to make her unable to bear the burden of this rumor. However, she was not a person who would be so easily splashed with dirty water. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to speak, Mo Yunjue put his hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Seeing this scene, the cultivators present all took a breath of cold air. At this time, Mo Yunjue still dared to put his hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder? Didn't this mean that everything Wu Yuexin said was true? Chapter 1406. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also fell on Mo Yunjue. She didn't understand why Mo Yunjue suddenly did this. It was really surprising. She immediately wanted to pull Mo Yunjue's hand away, but Mo Yunjue's strength was so great that she couldn't break free from Mo Yunjue's shackle for a while. Mo Yunjue's eyes looked straight at Wu Yuexin. His dark and deep eyes were full of disgust, and his voice was filled with a bit of coldness. Even if you want to splash dirty water, you have to find a more credible statement. Mo Yunjue turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang, and his eyes were filled with gentleness. Hongzhuang is my sister, and I have an affair with her? I really admire your imagination. With Mo Yunjue's voice falling, the faces of the cultivators present changed again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue in surprise. She never thought that Mo Yunjue would use such a method to help her clear her name. She knew very well that in the case of Wu Yuexin splashing dirty water, no matter how she denied it, it wouldn't be of much use because most of the cultivators would think that she was quibbling for herself. However, Mo Yunjue's words changed the situation. She was Mo Yunjue's sister. When Mo Yunjue said all this, the credibility was far higher than Wu Yuexin's words. Anyone in such a situation would choose to believe Mo Yunjue. As a result, the words of Wu Yuexin and others would have no power. On the contrary, Wu Yuexin and others would become the object of everyone's disdain. Xia Jiqing and others, who were originally very dissatisfied with Mo Yunjue's actions, heard Mo Yunjue's words, and their expressions changed a bit. Others didn't know, but they knew that Mo Yunjue liked Bailey Hongzhuang. However, when Hongzhuang was being slandered like this, Mo Yunjue could say such words to protect Bailey Hongzhuang. Just this point alone had proved Mo Yunjue's sincerity. At least, he was sincerely looking out for Hongzhuang and didn't want people to slander her. What nonsense is this Wu Yuexin talking about? He said that there's an affair between them. These two are brother and sister. I said that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue's looks are so outstanding. It turns out that the two are brother and sister. No wonder they are so good-looking. This team of the middle-sized Empire's team is really despicable to say such words to slander a woman. They are too vicious. I have long seen that this woman's temperament is so elegant. It is absolutely impossible for her to be the woman that Wu Yuexin said. For a time, the cultivators present immediately changed the topic, and suddenly one by one, Zhuge Liang ran out. However, compared to the disdain everyone had for Bailey Hongzhuang before, now everyone was full of disgust and disdain for Wu Yuexin and others. Generally speaking, even if there was a conflict between cultivators, it would be a fight at worst. Wu Yuexin actually came up with such a vicious way, it really made people ashamed. Fortunately, Mo Yunjue was Bailey Hongzhuang's brother. If it was another man, this slander would be confirmed. As a woman, how important was her reputation? Suddenly, everyone stood on Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Wu Yuexin was completely dumbfounded after hearing Mo Yunjue's words, and his brain couldn't react for a while. Mo Yunjue was actually Bailey Hongzhuang's brother? How is this possible? Chapter 1407. Wu Yuexin's gaze fell on Mo Yunjue's handsome and flawless face. This at least proved that Mo Yunjue didn't like Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to Wu Yuexin's joy at the moment, the faces of Han Xiling and the others were extremely ugly. Han Xiling stared at Mo Yunjue. She didn't believe what Mo Yunjue said. She had never heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had a brother. What's more, if Mo Yunjue was really Bailey Hongzhuang's brother, Bailey Hongzhuang should have taken Mo Yunjue to Tiangang sect to participate in the assessment. How could they be together in this assessment? It was ridiculous. However, even if she knew that this was impossible, at this moment, she couldn't find a reason to refute it. Not to mention, she was still mute. Han Xiling looked at Mo Yunjue incomprehensibly. She didn't understand why Mo Yunjue would say such a thing. Could it be that he really liked Bailey Hongzhuang so much? He liked her so much that he would do anything to protect Bailey Hongzhuang? When Han Xiling's mind came up with this idea, she couldn't believe it. Over the years, there were many men who pursued her, but those were only interested in her appearance and identity. She didn't know where the people who really liked her were. She didn't understand why the people around Bailey Hongzhuang were willing to sacrifice everything for her. Even Xia Jiqing couldn't understand. Xia Jiqing had always defended Bailey Hongzhuang. She didn't know what benefits Bailey Hongzhuang gave Xia Jiqing to make Xia Jiqing so loyal. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun also put away their opinions after seeing this scene. In fact, Pan Zimo never believed it. With Mo Yunjue's identity, what kind of woman didn't he have around him? How could he fall in love with a married woman? Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved, and the glass sword appeared in her hand. A pair of breathtaking eyes exuded a heart-palpitating light. You will pay for what you said. At the same time, the Yuan power in Bailey Hongzhuang's body burst out in an instant. After feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's strength of Orange Realm Level 5, Han Xiling's eyes revealed a strange color. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement to be so fast. Bailey Hongzhuang had only been in the small world for a few months, but she had already advanced 3 levels. She thought that she was already very happy. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang's speed would be faster than her speed. At the thought of this, Han Xiling's eyes couldn't help but be filled with jealousy. She had always been the pride of Tiangang's sect. Few cultivators of the same age could compete with her. However, as the gap between Bailey Hongzhuang and her gradually narrowed, the sense of urgency in her heart became stronger and stronger. There was an unspeakable tension. With Bailey Hongzhuang's aura, the speed of Xia Jiqing and the others was not slow. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. Han Xiling and the other strength was also exposed. However, Wu Yuexin and the others were dumbfounded after seeing Xia Jiqing and the others' progress. Thinking back, the gap between Xia Jiqing and the others' strength was huge. Now, in just a few months, their strength had improved so much. This was unbelievable. Chapter 1408. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't care about the surprise of Wu Yuexin and the others. Their figures flashed, and they immediately rushed up. Bailey Hongzhuang was the first to meet Han Xiling. The grievances between them had to be solved by themselves. Xia Jiqing and the others also quickly met Wu Yuexin and the others, each looking for their own opponents. Mo Yunjue looked at the situation of the two teams. The difference in strength wasn't very big, so there shouldn't be any problems. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had a lot of trump cards, but the battle between the Thousand Cloud Dynasty and the Qin Run Dynasty was more worrying. Soon, Mo Yunjue had made a decision. He first took care of one person in Han Shiling's team, and then went to help the cultivators of the Thousand Cloud Dynasty. After all, they must get the immortal spirit grass. Just as Mo Yunjue was about to take care of an opponent, Wu Yuexin was already standing in front of him. Wu Yuexin stood in front of Mo Yunjue. Looking at Mo Yunjue at a close distance, she felt that Mo Yunjue was very handsome. Young Master Mo. Wu Yuexin looked at Mo Yunjue with some hesitation. If she knew that Mo Yunjue was Bailey Hongzhuang's brother, she wouldn't have been an enemy of Bailey Hongzhuang. But in the current situation, even if she wanted to change her attitude, it wouldn't be easy. Compared to Wu Yuexin's complicated feelings, Mo Yunjue didn't even bother to listen to her words. In fact, such a woman couldn't enter his eyes at all. What's more, Wu Yuexin's words to Bailey Hongzhuang had already proved her viciousness. This kind of woman, he wouldn't even look at her normally. Without waiting for Wu Yuexin to finish her words, Mo Yunjue had already hit her with a palm. Boom! Wu Yuexin was hit hard. His body flew in a parabola and finally landed on the ground. Following everyone's line of sight, Wu Yuexin's face was flushed red, and the veins near his temples were bulging. His hands were clutching his chest, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Wu Yuexin looked at Mo Yunjue, who was not far away, only to see Mo Yunjue glancing at her indifferently before turning away. To Mo Yunjue, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, there was no difference between male and female cultivators. If it wasn't for the fact that this woman had gone overboard, he would have left her alive for Bailey Hongzhuang to deal with. Otherwise, he would have taken Wu Yuexin's life. Wu Yuexin covered her dantian with both hands. Her flushed face gradually turned pale. Her eyes were filled with fear and emptiness. She could not believe what had just happened. However, the spirit power that constantly overflowed from her body clearly reminded her that her dantian was destroyed. Mo Yunjue directly destroyed her dantian. This proved that she could no longer be a cultivator. What's more, in this small world, a waste would definitely die. She didn't think that Mo Yunjue would be so ruthless. He didn't even look at her from the beginning to the end. Xia Jiqing and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Mo Yunjue directly cripple Wu Yuexin. They could guess that Mo Yunjue's strength was very strong, but they didn't expect Mo Yunjue to be so decisive and domineering. It was beyond everyone's imagination. Wow, young Master Mo is really badass. Xia Jiqing looked at this scene and said with emotion. Chapter 1409. Listening to Yuan Xiaoman's words, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty all showed a refreshed smile. The things that Wu Yuexin had done before had already made them unable to bear it. They wanted to clean up Wu Yuexin, but they didn't expect Mo Yunjue to be so domineering. He directly destroyed Wu Yuexin's dantian. Now Wu Yuexin was a waste, and she had no ability at all. Xia Jiqing looked at Wu Yuexin coldly. Damn Wu Yuexin, she dared to say that about her and her boss. Now she also wanted to let Wu Yuexin taste the pain. Feeling Xia Jiqing's gaze, Wu Yuexin couldn't help but shudder. When she thought of all the things she had done before, she knew that Xia Jiqing would never let her go easily. As a result, she could almost imagine her next ending. Han Shiling and others obviously didn't expect Mo Yunjue to be so swift and decisive. It was just one move, and they lost one of their combat power. At this moment, Han Shiling and the others had a bad premonition. When Mo Yunjue made a move, they didn't even feel the fluctuation of Mo Yunjue's ability. This alone was enough to prove the strength of Mo Yunjue. They had found a strong opponent. Han Shiling glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so capable. She could find such a powerful helper in the small world. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shiling's constantly changing expression. With a wave of her right hand, a silver needle quickly shot out. Han Shilling didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly use a silver needle. With a careless move, the silver needle pierced her throat again. Feeling the existence of this silver needle, Han Shilling didn't dare to pull it out like last time. If something went wrong, she couldn't bear it. Before you die, if you have anything to say, then say it. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips curved into a mocking smile. Today, she would definitely not give Han Shilling the chance to escape. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Han Shilling was stunned and immediately tried to speak. Bailey Hongzhuang. After not speaking for a long time, Han Shilling's voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. When she opened her mouth, even she couldn't help but frown. However, after discovering that he could speak again, Han Shilling couldn't help but rejoice. This at least proved that she hadn't really become a mute. Bailey Hongzhuang, I will cut you into 1,000 pieces today. Very quickly, Han Shilling got used to speaking and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of hatred. Thinking about the humiliation she had suffered these days, she felt that even if she cut Bailey Hongzhuang into 1,000 pieces, it wouldn't be enough to vent her anger. I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. Her right hand gripped the glazed sword tightly, and a murderous aura spread out. You think too highly of yourself. Han Shilling laughed coldly. Your ability has indeed improved very quickly. However, you're now at Orange Level 5, and I'm already at Orange Level 7. What do you have to compete with me? The difference of 2 levels was enough for her to crush Bailey Hongzhuang. Then let's try, Bailey Hongzhuang said nonchalantly. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression, Han Shilling's gaze sharpened. Don't think that your little tricks can fool everyone. Chapter 14:10. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shilling, speechless. Han Shilling seemed to treat these groundless accusations as the truth. Now Han Shilling was making such a solemn vow, as if she had suffered a great grievance. It was really funny. Do whatever you want. Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes. She raised her azure glaze sword with her right hand, and the primary force in her body surged. Han Shilling was not slow either. A green sword appeared in her hand. She leaped forward and pierced her sword towards Bailey Hongzhuang with a sharp sword aura. Clang! Bailey Hongzhuang countered with her azure glazed sword at the same time. The old and new grudges between the two of them could not be resolved. At this moment, each of their attacks was ruthless. They wanted to kill each other in one move. Clang! 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 The crowd saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling turning into 2 whirlwinds. The green and white figures were entangled with each other, and it was hard to tell them apart. Sharp sword chi and bursting sparks continued to spread out, and cracks appeared on the ground around them. The cultivators who were watching the battle quickly retreated and distanced themselves when they saw the battle. However, they did not expect the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling to be so intense. Even though they were spectators, they could feel how powerful that sharp sword chi was. I did not expect these 2 ladies to be so powerful. This is surprising. Looks like this is going to be a fierce battle. Bailey Hongzhuang is only at Orange Level Rank 5, while Han Shilling is at Orange Level Rank 7. Why is it that Bailey Hongzhuang is not at a disadvantage when they are fighting? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling revealed their abilities, they already knew the difference in their abilities. However, they did not expect the battle to be so different from what they had imagined. When Han Shilling was fighting with Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a strong shock in her heart. Her clear eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang, and she did not understand. This was her first real battle with Bailey Hongzhuang. With Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation base, it was impossible for her to fight with Han Shilling for so long without showing any signs of defeat. If she was an ordinary cultivator, it would be fine. However, cultivators who did not come from a good background would not be strong enough even if they raised their cultivation base. As for Han Shilling, she grew up in Tiangang's sect and her grandfather had generously given her good cultivation resources. Even cultivators of the same level would not be able to hold on for so long. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was clearly weaker than Han Xiling. It was unbelievable that she could still hold on. If Bailey Hongzhuang knew about Han Xiling's thoughts, she would not be bothered. Han Xiling had only grown up in Tiangang's sect, while she was the head of the Bailey family in her previous life. With two different identities, it was easy to tell who had the higher status between them. The martial arts techniques that she had mastered were more powerful than Han Xiling's. Thud, thud, thud. In the next moment, the two figures that had been tightly entwined suddenly separated. Bailey Hongzhuang had to admit that Han Xiling's abilities were real. She was not weak at all. Therefore, it would not be easy to defeat Han Xiling in a short period of time. However, she believed that she would defeat Han Xiling in the end. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were fighting, the battle between the Qinrun dynasty and the Myriad Cloud dynasty had also begun. Chapter 1411. Mo Yunjue's move to defeat Wu Yuexin also had a certain impact on Dong Hongyun and the others of the Qinrun dynasty. Although Wu Yuexin's strength was not strong, Mo Yunjue was able to defeat him in one move, which was enough to prove that his strength was not simple. On the other hand, Pan Zimo and the others could not help but breathe a sigh of relief after seeing this scene. Mo Yunjue's strength was still very trustworthy. Xia Jiqing's group of 6, as well as Xiao He and Xiao Bai, were in full swing with their opponents. The disparity between them had now been quickly narrowed, and with Xiao He and Xiao Bai's help, their battle had become a lot easier. Boom! Ding ding ding! Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling did not retreat, and their fighting power fully erupted. In the process of the long swords being constantly entangled, the swords in their hands flew to the ground. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling looked at each other, and the fierceness in their eyes increased. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure took a few steps back, and the spirit energy in her body roared out crazily, continuously pouring into her hands. Immediately afterward, her palms turned, and a complex seal quietly appeared, and the fluctuations of energy quietly spread out. At the same time as Bailey Hongzhuang's movements, Han Xiling also began to use his martial arts. She absolutely could not let Bailey Hongzhuang have a chance to improve, and an indescribable sense of urgency suppressed her chest. If she let Bailey Hongzhuang continue to grow, maybe the next time they meet, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would really be stronger than her. When she thought of this, the killing intent in her heart became stronger. She must take this opportunity to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Sacred Azure Flame Palm. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted coldly in her heart, and a huge cyan palm appeared in midair. After using the Sacred Azure Flame Palm several times, Bailey Hongzhuang was now more and more proficient in it, and there was no difficulty and obstruction like before. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stop because of this. Her hand seals changed, and the huge cyan palm began to shrink rapidly. She never underestimated Han Xiling's idea. Han Xiling, as the representative of Tiangang's sect, was extremely famous and naturally had a certain ability. Therefore, she needed to be more careful when competing with Han Xiling. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang display such a move, their eyes showed a strange look. Bailey Hongzhuang's move. This move was not simple. When Xinyuan Huan and Bailey Haoshuan saw Bailey Hongzhuang's move, they were even more shocked. Although they had already expected Bailey Hongzhuang to be powerful, they did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so powerful. The ability of an Orange Realm level 5 was far beyond their expectations. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power was comparable to an Orange Realm level 7 cultivator? When they thought about themselves, the gap between them was really shocking. When the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's martial skill spread, Han Xiling also displayed his martial skill. Nine Dark Phoenix Finger. As Han Xiling's voice fell, A huge finger that was more than 10 feet long appeared in midair. Fine vein patterns covered the thick fingers, and a terrifying energy was transmitted from the fingers, causing people's hearts to palpitate. However, many of the cultivators stared at the finger, and their expressions changed. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.